Ah, perfect. Just the person I need to see. Firstly, loving the outfit, by the way. Really suits your hair. Secondly, the universe is falling apart. I don't have much time to yet. I need to shoot off. I need to do something. But by all means, this is imperative. Watch Type 40. Type 40 podcast is where you need to be. Seguida!
We're up. It's time for Type 40 Live. We've materialised again here with the live stream Doctor Who magazine show, lumbering and lurching across your view screen here in real time on Rumble, X, YouTube, and on Facebook too, here in front of a live chat full of fellow friends, fans, and companions just like you. Fans of what? Fans of this. Fans of them, of the Doctors and the companions, and crucially the villains and the monsters. This time we're back for another Halloween show, unlike any that have gone before, mind. It's I think it's amazing that it's taken us so long to do this, any of this. It's a thriller and a chiller, and we're as batty as ever here at Type 40 Live. Yeah. What's that creaking in the hallway? What's the winged shadow out there on the patio wall? And what's the smell? Could be anything, couldn't it? Welcome to Halloween night here at Type 40 Live with me, Dan Hadley, Birmingham's king of the geeks. As always, underdressed, but other people may have made up for my shortcomings. Happy to have you here for this celebratory show, our big Doctor Who Halloween night event. If they can do the Whoniverse, we can do Halloween, can't we? That's how I look at it. And yeah, you've got to join in too with all the nonsense, as always, whether you're in fancy dress or not. You can tell us about it over there in the live chat on all those platforms, including in the Type 40 Facebook group. As ever, if you're in the Facebook group, you've got to remember though to hit the little blue link, and then Facebook tells StreamYard precisely who you are, and they tell us, and we can all get on first name terms, can't we? Yeah, it's all. We're going to confide tonight, confide and confess, and try not to take the piss out of one another too much when we reveal what are our biggest ever shocks in the history of Doctor Who, both on and off screen. So much to share, and maybe a few skeletons to rattle loose. We'll have to wait and see, won't we, as we get deep into it. So which console room have we set the desktop theme to this time? Well, there's even less seating than ever here in the Masters. This is the Masters Tardis. Ooh. It's very reflective in places, and there's a little, some curiosities around the outside. I'm sure we'll get into that in a few minutes with the panel as I summon them. No Ouija board is necessary, although some of them, they could be, depending on whether I've got them out of the pub or not, they could be feeling the effects more than others. How are you this week, Charlotte?
I'm having fun. It's my week off, so it's just been nice not to be up so early and being a bit lazy, if I'm being honest. So that's been quite nice.
So you're not quite the undead tonight then?
Not quite.
You're feeling pretty good. Good stuff.
I was going to say, I might be going on a residential next week, so I'll probably next week look more like that when you see
my
me.
word. I can only
fun
imagine.
Of keeping awake, making sure children don't do stuff they shouldn't.
Do you do Halloween? You a Halloween person?
I'm not a dressing up person, but I do like sort of when the kids come in, and I like giving the sweets. That's sort of my enjoyment of the night more.
So do you think we'll be hearing the odd knock at the door or ring of the doorbell and you have to dart off
they should go round me
to share the licorice?
Hopefully we get some, and I'll mute myself, but I do like doing that usually.
We'll have to see as the night goes on. The intrigue and and the macabre will all race to the surface, I suppose. Let us know what you're up to, whether you're out trick-or-treating right now and sort of watching us or listening to us on the go. Yeah, we'd like to hear about your Halloween experience, both in the present and the past. Who else have we got? Who else are we disturbing? Actually, I think he's been disturbed for some time. It's our mate John Yalden.
Hey, how you doing? All right?
Bloody hell.
John, you look very dashing.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I decided to wear my work clothes, so look a bit posh tonight.
Didn't have time to get changed after work.
Yeah. Tell you what, it's hard work.
Toss the Sonic down on the bit.
I tell you what, these are hard work. Actually, they weigh a ton. I think it's like an anaconda around my neck at the moment. It's compressing my neck.
And John, how warm do you think you're going to get?
I was going to say he was sweating his balls off, bright red face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're like I've got two little blokes just with a fan working on them as we speak.
Good stuff. I can tell this is going to be a good one. Yeah. So in the Masters, one of the Masters TARDIS is here. This is the one that was seen on screen in the Keeper of Traken. It does look a bit like some sort of. Now I look at it more closely, it looks like some sort of porter cabin on an industrial estate somewhere, isn't it?
Do you know what it makes me think of? Like Crystal Maze, like an entrance they had for one of the sections.
Do you know what I love with the Master's TARDIS there, though? I like it when you look at the right. It's almost like he's got a bed there. And he's got, like you had as a kid, you had the desk over at the bottom of the bed. So he goes over to do his sinister little deeds. Then goes back to bed afterwards.
You could be right. That's not a bit.
Screen. He's got a telly in his room as well.
Yeah, it's total man den. That isn't a bed. I think that's a futon. And anybody who's ever had a futon or had to sleep on a futon, I had an ex-girlfriend who got a futon. It was a proper bastard. It really was. I've always thought they were the work of the devil, so it's only right that the master, the Prince of Darkness, would have a futon round at his place. What do you think? What do you think, Anthony? I know you're a bit of a style icon. Would you have a futon in Shay's, Anthony?
I don't, but I always like to dress for the occasion.
Can't Anthony, sorry, I was forgetting. And you got the roundels up as well. Wow, you really are in your TARDIS, aren't you?
I really am. It feels a little bit more opulent than the one we've just seen. It's like the Master's TARDIS from the Keeper of Traken there. It's like they've run out of money, wouldn't it? There's just a desk and a screen and a clock, and that's about it, and a futon, as John just said. There's not much going on there, is there?
I think all the money went for the paint, didn't it? Like that's where they spent it.
To be fair,
yeah, it does look that way.
And look at Anthony, though. Is that the 8th Doctor's TARDIS you're in right now? Because you got bats in there with you as well.
Yeah. I've really gone for it tonight, John. I tell you.
Yeah.
In my head, I see Vincent Price when I'm wearing this cape. But what I really probably see is Alan Partridge when he's bored on Bank Holiday Monday. And he's got a shower cap for to be a vampire, and he's got tungsten tip screws for claws.
Yeah.
So that's probably the reality. But in my head, I feel swish.
It's like me. In my head, I thought, oh, dapper 4th Doctor, but in reality, it's old man at a park bench smelling a wee. That's the kind of look I've got now.
It's all lies. It's all lies.
With your bird watching book.
Yeah.
I tell you what, we live in an age now in 2024 where, I don't know about Vincent Price, I find Katie Price considerably more scary than him. But yeah, we've got somebody else to bring onto the panel, I'm happy to say, our real life time traveller. I don't know if he does Halloween, if he really goes in for that down there, but he's always up at an ungodly hour anyway. It's our Matt Pott.
Hello. Yes, it's already over here, so there's no point in me getting dressed.
Thanks. Yeah.
That's a good out, Matt.
We're into
Good out.
November now, so
Yeah, happy November to you, mate. It's good to have you back.
Great. We don't really celebrate Halloween here. It's a bit strange. So yeah, it's only
No
just started to
trick-or-treating.
creep in. Really, no, it's sort of it's creeping in because they want to sell candy and all that sort of thing. So
Yeah, the bastards.
But yeah, that's all it's about. Having them M&Ms and stuff. So
Yeah.
But
What do you think
anyway.
about the Master's TARDIS here from 1980? Surprisingly sparse, but I think quite forward thinking because, as you pointed out there, John, he has got a big telly, but he's also got the ratio. It kind of fits with the smartphones that we've got now. So do you think that the Master could have been on Twitter even then?
He's still on there right now, isn't he? He's a time traveller. He's the one who began it all, isn't he?
I think it could be right.
Who knows what he's doing? He's probably the one that gives us all these spam feeds and fake profiles on Twitter all day long.
I'll put it past him.
Oh, he's probably responsible for half the fake rumours about Doctor Who, then, isn't he?
Yeah,
I was just
or telling us it's real.
I was watching the Sea Devils last night, and I hadn't seen it in a while, and it was quite funny because I just saw that big screen projection thing that he's got there, and he said, "Oh, can I have another television?" And can it be colour? And I just had that hell of a laugh.
There are some great moments in that story. There's some great moments in most Doctor Who stories, and that's very much what we're about on this edition of the show. Yes, within minutes, our panel will be summoning up up everything from the depths here, if they can stomach it, to relive some of the biggest shocks that they've ever had as fans and viewers and devotees of the Good Doctor. We're going to bring it all out into the light, the deepest and the darkest times and spaces that scared them the most, whether it makes the rest of us snigger or not. So that's how it's going to work. And you're going to join into over there in the live chat on YouTube, Rumble, X, and on Facebook too. And who knows where we'll be by the midnight hour, by the witching hour. That's what they call it, isn't it? Now, when I was a kid, as a Doctor Who viewer, it's Doctor Who above everything else all the time. It didn't really matter what the general culture was saying. I was a Doctor Who fan first and foremost. And so for me, whilst a lot of the kids, Matt, they felt that the ultimate sort of cloaked man in black who would choke you out was this guy. That was very much where the culture was. Darth Vader.
Yeah, when he was a real villain and we didn't know much about him.
Yeah, it was very mysterious, wasn't he? But for me, he wasn't the one that really shivered my personal timbers. It was actually this fella. It was the ultimate cloaked villain with a bellowing, crowing laugh. Was the Black Guardian, as played by the late, great Valentine Dial. We got to see his face. Of course, we never properly saw Vader's face in those original films, did we? But to me, he was considerably scarier, Anthony.
Oh, for sure. I mean, his booming voice and his kind of big scary presence. I mean, I was slightly older when this one went out, so this is Mordwin Undead. So I was slightly older, but his voice is chilling, isn't it? It's a very deep resonance. I think he was well known for playing the Man in Black. He had this very deep sounding.
It was a radio role, wasn't it? The Man in Black.
Right.
He used to narrate horror stories and things.
Yeah, big booming voice. So he's a great enemy. The Guardian of Chaos, I think we call him in 2024, don't we?
Well, it's funny. You see, you've preempted where I'm going. So, this is where we are at the moment because the Black Guardian, who was very much the figure in my childhood that scared me the very, very most in all of pop culture, he's kind of back. Sort of. So there's a whole new line of merchandise that's about to be launched, so we're told. And the first drippings that we're getting of it do feature Valentine Dial's Dial's Black Guardian, but with a bit of a difference, with something that we weren't expecting. You're quite right, Anthony. On the graphic here, on this whole range of merchandise, he appears to have been relabeled as the Guardian of Chaos. The Guardian of Chaos range is released on the 17th of January 2025 and does feature Valentine Dial with the crow, that look from the Black Guardian trilogy there in 1983. And the Gothic font, everything else is all there. And you think, well, why this? It's very nice to have something that's connected back to my era, but it's a very curious thing, isn't it, Anthony? Did this come as a bit of a bolt out of the blue for you then when you saw this?
Yeah, it did, and the rebranding, just as I preempted, Dan, the name change. So I can't imagine who, apart from classic fans, who perhaps will buy into this range that, as you say, that starts in January. But the rebranding of the name was the thing that caught my eye. I think it's Forbidden Planet, isn't it, Dan? That's releasing
right.
This particular range. He was always the Black Guardian to me, but yes, a rebranding.
I can't see how this idea, they hope for it to feasibly work when there's an entire set of stories called the Black Guardian trilogy, Charlotte. It's slightly mystifying.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's not like he's a character that's been in New Who, so the New Who fans aren't going to know him. Obviously, we've had like sort of hints towards his race in New Who. So, but the actual figure and like you said, the iconic look is all classic. So this, to me, seems like a really weird move because the market you're selling to is not going to be happy that you've changed the name. And it's going to put them off, I would think, buying this.
It is bizarre. I'd quite like to own this. As I say, this was a very important figure from my childhood. It's actually from something called the Flashback collection. And this is how they're hanging it loosely, even though this image, John, is from the 1980s. How they're going with this whole line is that, it's a celebration of 50 years of Tom Baker as the Fourth Doctor. by putting another actor in another role on a line of merchandise. It says celebrate 50 years of Tom Baker as the Fourth Doctor with the Flashback collection, returning to look back at one of Doctor Who's most defining fan favourite eras with an image from a different era altogether. Yeah. It says these items recreate one of the most powerful enemies the Doctor's ever faced, the Black Guardian, aka the Guardian of Chaos. So they do still name him the Black Guardian here in the publicity blurb that I'm reading from now. And it goes on to say, it's time to assemble the key to time and stop the Guardian's evil plans for all of existence by entering your credit card details, obviously, and buying some of this some of this merchandise from Forbidden Planet, just as Anthony was saying. So yeah, we've got the whole range as we've come to expect here. So we've got the coast there. You can set your mug down upon the Black Guardian's mush there, John. Obviously, in the day job there as a Time Lord and general sort of adventurer in the fourth and fifth dimension, have you ever bumped into this guy? And do you look forward to the idea of setting down a hot one upon his mush there?
Well, I've certainly worked with a few people that have come close to the Black Guardian over the years, but not him himself. But where are they going next with this? Please tell me. Do not bring him back, because we know what's going to happen in the new era. He'll just be in a pair of pants with a crow on his head, knowing them.
He looked like Sting in the Dune film from the 80s.
It's being awful to the birds.
Yeah. But then we get a little disclaimer at the bottom saying no crows were hurt or harmed during the making of this episode.
It was always a mystery, wasn't it? Why he had a crow on his head. It was always a big mystery that, even back in the 80s, it was like, well, there was this, this Machiavellian figure, and he's got a crow. He's like got emus shoved on his head.
I'd always assumed
a seagull. You can imagine, because it swooped down, try and get his chips, and he'll grab it, kill it, stick it on his head. But not
a pigeon that just got very confused.
I'd always assumed that he had killed it with his own bare hands, sort of probably strangled the life out of it. Eaten it, stuffed it, and then stuck it on his bonce there like that. If you want the coaster, that's $3.99 there exclusively from Forbidden Planet come January the 17th. And we've got prices too on these. God, I can't believe I'm even saying this. The stuff I do for you lot.
It's quite a good top, actually, to wear into a pub on a Friday night, isn't it?
God.
You know.
People think it's a real ale. Have you got this on tap?
Yeah. You get thrown out.
Yeah, with your beer mat as well.
I got proper damaged on Guardian of Chaos the other night. Is it still on tonight? Yes, so the sweatshirt there on the left, that's going to set you back $39.99. My God, dark prices. And the T-shirt, that's at $19.99. So these are, well, that's probably about average, I suppose, isn't it? And back to the badge there, that's more reasonable. Is it reasonable? I don't know. $10.99. If I'm paying £10.99 for a badge of the Black Guardian, I wanted to say Black Guardian, Matt. I'm sorry.
That's totally intentional. You can tell when they released those crappy ones for the new series, and you remember they were the only ones that they released, like the only merchandise that they had released. Maestro had his name on there really, really big.
Oh yeah.
But you know, we can't have Black Guardian. This reminds me so much of in the 90s, Captain Scarlet.
Yeah.
There's a character called Captain Black.
Okay.
And
I
there was
remember.
an outcry because the name's character was Captain Black and he was evil. And so and like, you know, you can't change their names. It's just so stupid. And this is totally 110% intentional. This has been changed because they don't want to offend anybody. And this is just, they want the money. They want the money. They know that there are people who pay for this, but they don't want to go too far. You know.
And they'll keep the White Guardian as well, though.
I tell you what, if I ever go to England, I'm never ever buying from that Forbidden Planet ever.
Will the White Guardian be renamed as the Guardian of Order or something like that, or the Guardian of?
I thought
Peace?
a Guardian of Light.
Yeah. The thing is, if you do it for one, you have to do it for the other.
Yeah.
You can't just do it for one half of the pairing.
No.
It wouldn't surprise me with them, though. I bet you, because they don't think like that. They're one-dimensional thinkers. So they probably will keep it as White Guardian, and then they'll go, "Oh, that doesn't count. That's not racism."
So, what are your instincts? Do you think that this potential? Because obviously he's mentioned as the Black Guardian there in the publicity blurb there from BBC Studios with Forbidden Planet. So they're acknowledging the characters called the Black Guardian. But what are your instincts? Is it that they are introducing an air of sort of ambiguity into it and an alternative sort of moniker for this character? Do you think that they're doing it to avoid using the word black and any kind of perception of any racial component to that?
Yeah.
Or, which is bad enough, which is absolute nonsense, or is this a further effort to deepen and to entrench this idea that Russell T Davies has of a pantheon of villains, which will incorporate his own creations very much on an equal footing with these classic characters? I think both options are pretty egregious, to tell you the truth.
It's both of them. Both. It's 100% both of them, without a doubt. And they're going down that route, and RTD is trying to reshape Doctor Who into his own image of it. That's one, and then what we talked about on the other as well. So yeah, it's 100% both of them.
There's also. Sorry, Charlotte, you go.
I would say there does seem to be a real drive to go back to classic and make it better, to make it more acceptable, whether that's Davros is no longer allowed to be in a wheelchair, Sutek is now a massive CGI dog on top of the TARDIS, we can't have the Black Guardian. It does seem that they are just, there's something wrong with classic for these people.
I honestly think
to hunt for offence.
Yes.
I think also it's a possibility that they could be preempting something, and I think that it's a possible that old crone that was living next door to Millie, she could end up being the new Guardian of Chaos, but like, you know what I mean? They'll refer to her as the Guardian of Chaos. So, you know, it's a possibility that they're just getting ready and they're like, oh, you know.
And thought that the original concept was that the same actor would play both the White and the Black Guardian. So maybe they could go back to that concept. I don't know. I think it's possible.
Is this the same Guardian who's so powerful that she just sat there and let Sutek turn her to dust with everybody else? So he's already, if that is the case, he's already diminished what he was going to do anyway.
It's all falling to pieces already, everybody. All falling to pieces. Now, let us know what you think about all this in the live chat, obviously, and in the comments section. Have you seen this line of merchandise? To celebrate 50 years of the Tom Baker incarnation of the Doctor, all this stuff from 2 years after he left. And will you be snapping up any of this line of merchandise that celebrates the Black Guardian stroke, the Guardian of whatever it is, Chaos?
Dad, Black Guardian. Don't use this, you haven't.
What do they call it? A word salad.
Oh, thankfully.
We know him as the Black Guardian. That's what matters.
Even if all hope for any kind of integrity, whereas when it comes to like classic characters in the modern era is dead, I can tell you what is absolutely alive. It is the live chat we've got here, full of our fellow friends, fans, and companions who've been dropping comments already about all of this. So I think it's high time we head over there and see if we can get some sense and reason from the rest of fandom, which generally does, for the most part, seem to be the case.
That cursed Doctor is interfering with my plans, but I will destroy the universe. He won't be able to stop me, but you might, if you watch Type 40.
Yes, it's time to have a scream here with the Doctor Who girls and our live chat full of messages. Thank you, everybody who's turned up so far. Great to have you with us, including John. That's you, John. There you are. We've got Rob Alexander in the live chat as well. Peter Harrington too. Good to see some familiar faces. And Rob, Peter. We've got Gary Akers as well, the retro doc himself. And several of those stretching all the way back. Some people dropping comments this afternoon. Dear me, how's that for time travel? I don't. Good stuff. Yes, keep them coming, everybody. We want your opinions about everything so far. Hello, chat says garbage.
Yeah, garbage.
Oh, it's good to see garbage in there. And we've got Michael Q says happy Halloween and some purpose dropped emojis there. There's a pumpkin dude and a ghost. Yeah, very, very creative. Thank you, John Boo. There's Michael Q. Boo. That's what he says. I like it.
Thank you
Throw
very
yourself
much.
into the part, Michael. Throw yourself into the part. And we've got Rob with a pumpkin as well. So yeah, keep all the emojis coming too. Evening all, says Simon Ashley. Good evening, Simon. And a happy Halloween, a special happy Halloween to Tom Alford from T-Dwarf Productions. He says he's going to be watching his favourite Halloween movie, Eight-Legged Freaks, later. Happy to say that Tom has sent us in some fabulous Halloween-inspired fan art as well there from T-Dwarf Productions HQ, including this little beauty here. So K9... K9 is feeling the pinch here of a giant spider, I think. Or is it? This would be from State of Decay, wouldn't it? The wolf weeds or something like that. Or is it a mashup? I don't know. But it looks suitably spooky. And obviously, me being a big K9 fan, John, you know, I hope the little fella makes it out of this, doesn't get chomped on by one of Tom's spiders.
Come on, K9, fight back, son, fight back.
Give it your best. Give it your best. This is all great stuff. As always, go and follow Tom on his social medias, T-Dwarf Productions, for more of that and lots more of this as well. He's been busy working some pumpkins up as well. Look at that stars for eyes there. Fantastic. Very, very Looney Tunes. So thank you for sending all these in, Tom. There's loads more to come later on as well, I'm happy to say. Heretics in the live chat says, evening all. Hope you're having a spooky night. We are. I think we're getting there, aren't we? Thanks to Tom and everybody in the live chat there. Count Anthony with his bats.
Whoa.
You are a big Halloween fan usually, Anthony, or is this a rare thing for you, just for us?
Well, it's a bit of both, to be fair, Dan. I love dressing up and any opportunity. So the cape came on very easily. Like John was saying, it feels like I'm in the McGann TARDIS with all the bats. But I don't know if it feels like somebody's cupboard or closet with all these bats coming out. So yeah, not a usual thing for me in terms of Halloween dressing up, but I thought I would tonight, especially for the occasion.
Oh, we're very, very honoured. Happy Halloween, everyone, says Corvin in the live chat as well. It's always good to see you there, Corvin, mate. You were saying, Anthony? I interrupted you there.
I was gonna say, Dan, if I'd known we were talking about the Guardians of Chaos and the Guardians of Peace, as Charlotte says, the black and white Guardian, I would have come with a little crow on my head, because the white Guardian, he had that sort of white little peacock thing on his head, a dove thing. So I would have done that. I would have put an emu on my head, but no.
Do you have an emu or a crow to hand, or would you gone and rustled one up?
Yeah, going to go out on a killing spree.
Yeah, into the garden. Just take my cape with me, right, and the hood, and yeah.
Chris.
It's not very Guardian of Peace, though, is it? Not very Guardian of Peace.
No.
That one.
Chris is in from Black Glove Studio. That's very Halloweenish as well, isn't it? The black glove is perfect for Chris. Matthew Butterfield says his front door is firmly bolted. I don't blame you. You never know who's out and about at this hour of the night or what they're up to. Speaking of which, you may have noticed no Simon Horton. He is or has been out and about. He's only gone and defected. Check this out. Here's Simon. This is how Simon hanging around with a couple of mates. I know, he's gone over to the dark side by the looks of things. I am assured that Simon will be back on the right side of the Force and more importantly back with us here at Type 40 Live very, very soon. So stay tuned, Simon Horton fans.
He looks very aggressive there, doesn't he? Like some sort of mafia fixer, you know. Yeah. Where's our money?
I was going to say, Dan, can you explain that photo? What on earth's going on?
Anthony, I'd be lying if I said I could. My hope is that upon his return, Simon will explain exactly what's been going on, where he is, and more importantly, why and what's going on. Yeah. We'll have to wait and see. Won't we, ladies? We've got lots more messages in the live chat as well. Thank you, everybody. We've got Tom and a big old black heart from Matthew Butterfield as well. James A. Fitzpatrick's here too, and he says the sun is still up here in New England. Trick or treaters in 2 hours or so. Last year we had none. Did you get to scoff all the sweets yourself, or the candy, James, as you would call it? Let us know. Doug Stewart's in too. Hi, everyone. Hi, Doug.
Hello, Doug.
We have Ezra Goldstein and Vanessa Law too. I know that Lord Thoth is kicking around as well. Thank you, everybody who's moderating on the channel as ever. Matthew Powder says the Masters console room was way cooler. The Masters I don't know. I'm sort of fond of that one myself, and the Keeper of Traken. Although the last one that we saw was really intriguing, but it was on screen for like 3 seconds or something. This is how the Masters TARDIS looked when we last saw it in Spyfall. You know, most people will have forgotten this, or would have more importantly blocked it out because it starred Jodie bloody Whittaker. But this was a really intriguing design that I'd like to have seen them do more of. But heaven knows what the Master will have when he next appears in whatever form. Odds are we won't ever see this version of his TARDIS again, but it does make you wonder, doesn't it? We've got Adam Charlton's in the chat. Great to have you back. Evening, everyone. Happy Halloween from Adam in the Geek's handbag there. Hopefully we'll have him back on the show sooner rather than later, but it's always great to catch up with you there, Adam. Not just a clock, the Master's second TARDIS. Yeah, that was people who haven't seen the Keeper of Traken. We don't want to give the game away. We've got Domgo in the live chat as well. Just popped out of the coffin for you guys tonight. You've gone to all that effort just for us, Charlotte.
Thank you, Domgo.
Did you say Drongo?
I thought she was going to say Donga, but don't worry, that's an Australianism.
To be fair, Matt, my head was like, I was about to say it, and then it was like, Charlotte, what are you actually saying?
Don't make me laugh, Matt. This scarf crushes my neck every time I do that.
Shocking, absolutely shocking. We've got ghostly hails and salutations in the live chat between pals and friends. Doctor Who only terrifies me when I say the words written by Chris Chibnall on the screen, confesses Gary Akers, the Retro Doc. Well, we'll mention the Unholy One as infrequently as we can. We won't mention his name in vain. He's a bit like the Candyman, I suspect, Chris Chibnall. If you say his name 3 times, oh no, I've already said it twice. If you say his name 3 times, he may well appear. So we'll have to be very, very careful for the rest of the stream. Rob Alexander says the man in black in the 40s and the 50s. He's talking about Valentine Dial there. Of course he is. I've never actually heard any of that stuff, but I've been reading about it for 45 years, Anthony, since he's been involved with Doctor Who. It's just one of those things, the memories that sort of get passed down, the bits of knowledge that fandom passes down from one generation to the next, isn't it? Can you buy a chicken wig? This is the most important question of the night so far from Domgo. Can you buy a chicken wig? Any ideas, Matt?
Buy a wig for chicken?
That's what I was wondering. Oh, yeah.
It's a Guardian reference.
There's probably a fetish for that. No.
Wigs for chickens.
Reference, isn't it?
So
probably
that's
in
what I
New
thought.
Zealand.
A wig that was sort of made out of chicken with a chicken's head on it, but you wigs for chickens.
Yes.
Yeah. Why has anybody done this?
I prefer Matt's version, to be honest. It's much better.
Could be. Domgo is going mad creative here in the live chat with alternatives for things that they could call the Guardians. Corvin says in the live chat, I thought the black and white Guardians were rebranded as Chaos and Order in the New Adventures. That's the line of novels from the 90s, isn't it? From Virgin Publishing, if I recall correctly. Corvin, they may have been, but I didn't read those bloody books. I read the first few; they were terrible. So, quite frankly, I stopped. I read 3 or 4 of some of the later ones, but sincerely, I couldn't stand them. So, I think if they were in those books, then obviously that does imply a certain kind of legacy. But I don't think it gets Russell off the hook. What do you think, John?
No, doesn't.
Vanessa's finding it all so exhausting already, John, as well. Dear, oh dear.
Yeah, well, we push the envelope on this show, don't we? We go right.
Always.
Yep.
Always. And of course, we do have a social conscience. As Domgo says, Black Guardians' lives matter. Everybody, it's very, very serious. Very, very serious. And he said, but Peter Harrington says that he is too orangey for crows. So could that be? Well, is it a crow? I think it is a crow on his head, isn't it? Rather than just a black bird. I think we've all got the consensus.
It's a raven. I always thought it was a raven, but that's.
What's the difference between a crow and a raven? Is one bigger than the other?
Don't know.
Okay.
Why are you asking me?
Why are you bothering me with any of this shit?
Matt, I always think you're fountain of knowledge. You know, that's why I go to you.
Listen, we have got a proper fountain of knowledge in the live chat here, not like us numpties sat here on the panel on Type 40 Live. We have our roving reporter overseas here, Adam, says that the name change is down to the BBC. He's been told by someone involved with merchandise. So, yeah, the name change is down to the BBC. They consider the Black Guardian to be problematic, and he was told by someone involved with the merch. How terribly predictable and awfully disappointing. But thank you for the information, Adam. It's appreciated.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, no, I told you. I knew that was a marketing thing. It was like, oh no, we don't want to offend.
Yeah.
Absolute bullshit. Should be resisted. This should be resisted. None of us should play along with this. Absolute nonsense. Steve Bartle says in the live chat, I love the Black Guardian. He will always be the Black Guardian. Stop with the incessant tampering wit. He's over there on X.
I just really get the sense now. This is what second series is going to be all about.
Yeah.
He's preempting it. He's getting it out there so people get used to it. Because obviously people didn't get used to Davros, did they? So obviously he's like, oh, I'm gonna get a bit of flack for this. So I better.
The way it's going, it's kind of like, you remember when you used to think when you were younger about like big villains and monsters teaming up. Now the worst they're going to do is sit round and have a chat and be scared of insulting or upsetting each other or cancelling each other out. That's where we're going with it. So, Black Guardian with Davros, they just have a cup of tea, talk about what their day's been like.
You know, I reckon one day they're just going to go up to that new doctor and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't fight you. You're marginalised."
And then he'll cry.
Yeah. I mean,
little tear.
I was going to say the Black Guardian was a really big figure in the 20th anniversary of celebrations for Doctor Who, because they invited. I was at the Longley 20th big event at Longley, and they had Valentine Dial there on the panel with Peter Davison. So he was big news.
Yeah.
You know, this was the big villain of that year. You know, and it feels like it was building up to the anniversary, the Five Doctors. But so having this kind of new, right, okay, the Armageddon factor, but a relatively new enemy coming back for that 20th anniversary was really big business at the time, and well cast. You know, so I remember seeing him on a panel, thinking, what a great actor, and he was just sat with the current Doctor and the companions. So it was big business.
Well, if you remember, Anthony, they were very proud to have Valentine Dial associated with the show, weren't they? Because of his stature, his cultural significance.
Yeah, agreed. So I agree with what everybody has said so far. You know, the losing of the black tag on the Black Guardian is nothing but, you know, exactly as Adam describes. It's for that association.
And the thing is, when is this going to end? Are they actually going to go back into Mordred Undead, remove Black from the episode, but also they'll remove Hippo from the episode because he was bullied by the Brigadier for being overweight? Is that also going to be coming at some point as well? Because you just never know.
Where does it all stop? But like you say, Dan, there's a Black Guardian trilogy set. You know, it's happened, it's happening. You know, it's already out there. So. Yeah,
and also there's this thing of, well, in your first series you didn't create any good villains, but now, so that also makes it worse that they can't create their own and they're retroactively changing classic ones.
Yeah, retroactively making all the good ones shit as well.
Yeah, and they're not creating their own.
Nice job, Russell.
Yeah.
Happy Halloween to the panel and the chat as Ezra Goldstein. And we've got a comment here from Simon Anthony. Hi, happy my birthday yesterday. Happy birthday for yesterday, Simon. Hope you had a brilliant time. I think we've got a birthday coming up on the panel very soon.
Me,
young lady, you as well.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a big number. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm going to be a massive number too.
You've been a massive number two for years.
I just went, oh, sorry. Shoot, I just opened myself up for that.
Put that one down.
I'm hitting a decade.
Well, listen, happy birthdays to both of you. Here's a big salute, I know, from Charlotte's favourite doctor. And for
got a month.
Oh, but bloody hell! Yours isn't for a month.
Yeah, at the end of the month, mine is.
Oh. All right, happy birthday! Bloody hell! Okay, happy birthday, Charlotte. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Mine's a bit sooner.
I'm still younger.
Talking of birthdays, I was amazed that Matt Smith was 42 this week.
Yeah,
he does not look it, does he?
Oh no!
My goodness,
he's aging really well.
I was always annoyed because he was the first Doctor that was actually younger than me, and I was like, "Oh God, here we go," you know. And I was like, "Oh my God, he gets it! Holy crap, he actually has his head on." Great.
Yeah. I never thought I'd see a Doctor older than me again, and then cast Capaldi. I was very, very surprised. Yes, so we've had a selection of shockers already here on the panel and in the live chat. What on earth can be coming next? Here's a hint. For example, did you know, how about this for a shock, that Elizabeth Sladen, the late, great Elizabeth Sladen, went to school with Edwina Curry, the former Conservative MP, and there they are.
I did not know that.
It shocked them into silence, everybody. Shocked them into silence.
I don't even know who that is.
Yeah.
Edwina Curry. Who's that?
Which, of course,
that's a Who episode in itself, isn't it?
Is she on the good side or the bad side?
It depends who you talk to, buddy.
It looks more like Eunice Stubbs from Wurzel Gummidge.
It does. I see what you
funny.
mean. Yeah, I do. It's deeply shocking already. Look, thank you to everybody who's joining in so far over there in the comments here for our Halloween night, Halloween night extravaganza. We've got a lot to disclose as the show goes on. Please remember, we don't often say this now, but please like the video. If you've got just a couple of seconds, that's all it takes. There's a lot of people watching across YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and on X2. Just a couple of seconds to like the video. It does help a lot more than you think. And if you like what you see, subscribe to the channel. Check you're still subscribed if you think you are, because YouTube certainly can be tinkers like that. And hit the cloister bell too to get all the notifications about what's coming next and when it's coming, as always. But for now, yes, let's get deep into the really scary stuff.
Hello, I'm Philip Roy playing the Doctor in the Doctor Who fan film Doctor Who Meets the Scorpion. I've been on quite an adventure, and this is most definitely the Type 40 podcast.
Can I just say I'm looking forward to that more than anything else?
Yeah, Phil is he's probably on an industrial state right now, on all fours. Being thrown around by some.
Well, they couldn't get the real canine in, so he's had to do it himself. Has he?
Oh yes, our best wishes as always to Phil and everybody working on Doctor Who Meets the Scorpion. We're all really looking forward to that. 61 years of Doctor Who on screen, of course, has inspired Phil and everybody else. It's a big chunk of time, and generation upon generations of British kids and kids all over the world have sat glued to the show, and afterwards sort of complained to their parents about how scared that they are because they've seen said show. I've worked out that over that 61 years, it's accounted to well over 20,000 bedtimes. So heaven knows how many of those have been delayed, disturbed, and probably, it has to be said, rained off, all in the name of the Doctor. So our favourite series may be nothing compared to stuff like The Terrifier and the Saw movies, Freddy Krueger, or even like Norman Bates and all the really sort of old school stuff. But the target demographic, Doctor Who has always had, well, more than the desired effect, shall we say, sometimes without even meaning to. What's that quote that somebody once said connected to the show about terrifying the little buggers? Was that Terrence Dicks, somebody like that, Anthony?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sounds like it. Yeah, to be fair.
Oh,
yeah.
It's Robert Holmes, actually, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Robert Holmes. I think it was one of the old school guys.
Could easily be him too. Yeah.
There was a playfulness, certainly with a lot of the original raft of creatives that worked on the show in the 60s and the 70s, I think, until a certain person got involved, and we'll come to her later on, who did sort of delight in seeing how far they could push it and the response that they got from the audience. I mean, here on the panel, just between the five of us, we all came to the show at different times in our lives, and some of us in completely different countries. And yet the show has had largely the same general effect on us, hasn't it? Obviously, it's brought us all together and it's compelled us to carry on watching, but all of us are well into adulthood, even Matt. And yet it's these kind of, it's the more, in a sense, I feel it's the simpler thrills associated with something like Doctor Who that actually chill the deepest and the longest, and the basic ideas of fixating on shadows on walls and things like that, those kind of more primal fears, those are really what drive the show and make it compulsive viewing and the kind of things that we want our children to inherit, Anthony. You know, we delight in new people finding this show, don't we, in this universe?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Dan. I mean, we all come in at different points on this one, don't we? But when we were thinking about, scary Doctor Who moments, or when I first engaged with Doctor Who, I was torpedoed right into the middle of the Philip Hinchcliffe era. So I can remember pretty vividly every story from about Robot onwards. So some of those images for a young child, like Mary Whitehouse would have said, because I was 5 years old, some of those images that you were watching every Saturday, you know, were quite close to the mark, weren't they? You know, so, and some of those, you know, if you asked me what I did yesterday, I would have no clue. But if you asked me, did I remember anything from the brain of Morbius? You know, I can distinctly remember, you know, that cobweb kind of cloth, and then the Morbius monster getting up from the bed and then clapping that claw. You know, I can remember that very vividly. So Doctor Who creates, doesn't it, those kind of scary, vivid memories, which are, as you say, those fears. It's not necessarily, you know, full on horror, but I think it does scares really well. And those are the images that stick in my head from when I first engaged with Doctor Who.
Including the giant pumpkin here on screen.
Didn't engage with that one so much, but yeah, Philip Hinchcliffe Doctor Who for me.
Here we are going back there as well for your amusement. We're risking sleepless nights again ourselves as we trade our own top of the Doctor Who shocks here on the Halloween night extravaganza. So as we work our way through this, we're gonna exchange these memories and trade our fandoms in a sense, because it can be quite exposing, not just of one's age, Charlotte, but just of the kind of things that make us tick. Because I think some of the things that stay with us as different people stay with us for different reasons too.
Yeah, well, we've all got things that are sort of specialist with us that get the chill. Like, as a kid, I would read Stephen King books. I'd love to read those books. So a good chunk of stuff, which would probably scare other people, didn't get me. But then I had my own like embedded stuff that when an episode did touch on it, I think that's what we all remember a little bit. It was
like touching raw tissue.
Yeah, it's like it's when either a monster or a theme or just a story in general, you almost felt like the writers knew you and they on purpose put something in that story which got in your head. And I think we've all got, for different reasons, those sort of moments. And I think that's because Doctor Who, and this is sort of, I think if it's done badly, it can be a problem, but I've always seen it as a good strength if done well. Doctor Who isn't confined to one type of story, to one kind of character it can explore, to one kind of universe. One week you can have something that's hammer horror, or you can have something a bit more psychological, or you can sort of explore so much. And I think that's why usually the scary stories can be very different, but they all seem to hit when they do.
I remember being kept awake at night by this show. I never got banned from watching it, Matt, but I speak quite a lot to people. Not just like the not we, when they find out you're a Doctor Who fan, they say, "Oh, my mum stopped me from watching that," or "My dad said I couldn't watch it," or "My gran," or whatever. But fans as well, who for them part of the appeal was like it was forbidden fruit. They were scared one too many times of it, and their parent banned them from watching it, which only made them want to see it more. In fact, I think Nicholas Briggs, the voice of the Daleks, he talks about having that experience as well. I think it was his mum or his nan or somebody stopped him from watching it, and it just made him worse. And look at him now, you know, he writes probably more of it than anybody else across various different medias.
Yeah, I mean, I never had that problem where they said no, you'll never be able to, you can't watch Doctor Who or whatever. I mean, I was lucky. I was growing up in a family of older siblings, so when they were watching, I was allowed to watch it with them, you know, and they sort of introduced me to it. So, you know, but I never ever really got terrified. It actually excited me more, to be honest. You know, the fact that, especially with the cliffhangers, you know, I was like, oh, what's going to happen? You know, what? And of course, when you're very young, you don't know, like when you're 3 or 4, you don't know anything about time. So you're like, you know, when's Doctor Who on? When's Doctor Who on? You know, and so, you know, you just get sick of it. It's like, it's not on for ages. But, you know, I mean, it's just one of those fond memories that I've got, especially around the time with my siblings and that, because it was really the only time that we were together. Otherwise, you know, because they were a lot older and stuff, they were everywhere else. So
they probably enjoyed seeing your reaction to it.
Yeah, I know. My sister did. She was really the one that introduced me. So, yeah, but it was good because I knew that, I was safe and everything. And, especially this one here, with Pertwee. I mean, we got Pertwee all the time. And it's funny watching, just talking about that now with Pertwee. One of the other memories that I have is of Pertwee with the Peladon monster doing the flute,
Oh, yeah, trying to hypnotize it.
And dancing around and stuff. And it's like, for kids, that's pretty, it's like all of a sudden you got this scary monster and all of a sudden he's like, dancing to him. It's like, it's comforting. And yeah, I've always thought Doctor Who is comfort food for me.
These are the kind of stories that I love hearing. I mean, John's, you're physically nodding because it's we do all feel a version of that same thing.
Absolutely. I mean, it's for me, it's always that fear of the episode scaring me, but the rush to watch it because I just love the, I want it to be like the Doctor. I'm scared, but I'm going to go through it anyway. So I'd peer up above the sofa and that was it really, or let go of my mum's hand. But
yeah,
there's so many moments throughout the show that are just special to me that I think, I mean, there's some unusual ones. I mean, one I'll give it as an example is
let's start with you because we're going to recount some of our greatest hits or greatest shocks. So you give us one. You can fire one of yours to us now.
Okay, so I was going to say for me, Stones of Blood, where the campers are in their tent and they come out and the ogre's outside and they don't know, they're like, where's it come from? And then it starts sucking the blood, from them and they start turning to skeletons. That scared me when I first watched it. That was a really sort of graphic image for Doctor Who.
A lot of that, from what I remember, is in the performances. The actors involved, they really sell that, don't they? Because we don't really see that much, do we? But the idea is implanted and they play it with like mega conviction. So you get some, oh my God, this is...
Because she can't get a hand off, can she? So she's like, and then he comes along and then you see one of the arms turn to a skeleton and then it goes off cam, doesn't it? And you hear the scream, great stuff.
I always like the fact it looks like one of those Tales from the Crypt type effects, where they just translucent.
Yeah. I like how she comes out first because he's clearly putting his pants back on, isn't he?
Suddenly they're turning into a medical skeleton.
I was gonna say, John, it just that part I hadn't even considered that as a scary moment until you've just reminded me of it. But it's just that part of the Stones of Blood when that happens, it's so out of context in many ways with the rest of the story. It sort of catches you by surprise. It sort of comes from nowhere, that scene, and it's full on for me. It's it's full on horror. It's like it went from a family program, a children's program, into this real kind of, as you say, this kind of, she puts her hand on it and it like glows and she can't, body horror. She can't quite get her hand off. And then it fades to red, doesn't it? Or something, it fades to black.
That's it.
It goes red and then the story carries on. It's a strange, scary cutaway, that, isn't it? I can see why it is
a strange one because it's like not long before that, you got the Doctor lying on the stone surface and the night he wakes up with the knife about to be plunged into him and he's like, sorry, has that been properly sterilized? And then it's 5-10 minutes later you've then got that scene where someone's being sucked to death in a bad way.
I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? When you talk to other Doctor Who fans, you can sort of disturb latent memories that have sat with you. When you first mentioned that, I thought, where on earth is he going with this? And then
it's normal for me, though, isn't it?
Well, then it came back to me because the Stones of Blood. It was I remember that story very, very vividly from way back. But I think over the years, it's kind of gathered a little bit of dust because there's a lot of really scary stuff before and after. And I've just remembered, now you've said that, when I was at school, at the top of the playground, there were a set of stones that were inset into a sort of sandy play area. Large stones that a lot of the time, most kids, including me, we used to pretend they were motorbikes and things like that. And I was the saint. I was Ian Ogilvy as the saint, riding a motorbike to chase some girl or whatever. So, but after that story, because they were giant stones, I remember myself and my friends putting our hands on them and pretending that they were stuck.
Yeah.
And we had to try and save one another. I'd totally forgotten about that until you mentioned that.
That's the beauty of Doctor Who, because it's the ordinary that becomes the extraordinary. And I think where Moffat got it right was with the Weeping Angels when he brought it back. People would talk about that, but that was a similar thing for me. And yeah, I love this story, and I do love that bit.
Yeah, the Weeping Angels are a hell of a creation. The simplest idea, John, a classically simple idea. And I think it's quite telling that, 20 years now of New Who, they're probably one of only really 2 or 3 monsters that have really cemented themselves with the British public in that way. That's a really really great shock to throw back at me. Certainly it's shocked me because how much I remember how that made me feel too. It's an absolute belter. What about you, Charlotte?
Sort of a bit to what I was talking about, the more personal side of it. Like, the thing that's creeped me out since, God, I think I must have been a teenager, and I watched a Goosebumps episode. Yeah. And it was the Goosebumps episode where a ventriloquist doll comes to life and turns all the kids into dolls as well. So ever since that, I have absolutely been creeped out and get the shiver when I see the old-fashioned where like the mouth comes up and down.
Oh, I know.
So there's sort of two that sort of lead into this. You've got the God complex when you've got that scene in the hall. I can't remember what room it was. That big room.
The dining room.
Yeah. Was it the dining room? And you've got the guy tied up, surrounded by nearly identical dolls to the thing I saw in that Goosebumps episode.
Yeah.
So when I watched that, I'm thinking my thought as well, thinking that would be my worst nightmare, to go into that room and see that. And it just, actually, it didn't scare me, but it was one of those things where it was like that. I could like almost picture myself not being able to move if I was in that room and sort of being frozen.
Yeah.
And then also you've just got that whole episode was creepy. And that scene definitely. And then in sort of a different version, but it's the same idea. Night Terrors. The episode where you've got the monsters which have like paper mache heads.
Yeah.
I was going to say I can picture them now, but I can't quite remember what they were made of. That's the one with Daniel Mays, isn't it? It's like set in a family home, isn't it?
Written by Gattis, yeah.
Yeah, and you've sort of got the dollhouse sort of theme, and it's like half in the dark, that episode as well. It's very sort of claustrophobic.
Yeah.
So both of those, it was one of those like chill down my spine moments, because it was something that I really get creeped out by. And like for other people, probably wouldn't have had the same effect. And also it's that thing of once, what John was saying, of taking something ordinary, and that's what Moffat did so well. But I think that was a Gatiss episode, Night Terrors. But that whole era really just took that idea of, it didn't have to be a big old scary monster covered in scales and having all the traditional things. It was, let's take something that's a bit more ordinary and twist it and sort of warp it into something else. And also in Night Terrors, you have that, you sort of,
very effective.
From my memory, they giggled like children when they got turned into those creatures.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you would just have scenes of giggling children in the dark. And I remember just being really creeped out. So those are like my New Who memories of episodes which just got me more than others.
Yeah, those are episodes that I haven't watched in a long time, and it just goes to show that people who've come to the show considerably later, have latched onto different things, and I think things where episodes that may have passed some of us by, or we've kind of let gather a little bit of dust, see them in a different light when we see them how other people see them. Obviously, a lot of these episodes are augmented too by the talented work of other people. You could say that the music has always added so much to the flavour, the ambience of Doctor Who. Peter Harrington reminds us here of the work of Dudley Simpson. Dudley Simpson's music always added that extra scary touch, and that's my long-lasting memory. You could say that if you watched a lot of these things, a lot of clips from classic Doctor Who, if you watch them on mute, there's a chance that some of them may look slightly ridiculous, I don't know, without the music there to heighten the tension. I wouldn't like to say. Peter goes on to say that Kinder was a cracker, more psychological. That was scary in a different, psychological horror, thriller. It's a different kind of story. I wouldn't class that personally as a horror story myself, but it had a kind of frightening edge because you're taken to the brink of somewhere. It's connected to sort of mental health, isn't it? And the divide between reality and the different side to the human psyche. Scary monsters and super creeps, says Lee Smith in the live chat. How do you like this, Matt? Calling us scary monsters and super creeps.
Yeah, no, I've been called a creep before, so it doesn't matter. But
we're now super
creeps. Thanks, Lee. Good to have you back.
You look at some characters like Alpha Centauri. Now, Alpha Centauri gets a lot of flack, but if you looked at the character in context, you would think that would be a scary character because there's one big eye, But then when she starts talking, people laugh at it now. But when or should I say she? But when she talks, because it's a female voice, and it's just slightly slow, it's low, it's higher pitched. You kind of feel like, oh, okay, she's friendly, because she doesn't sound like she's.
It immediately kind of drains it of some of its threat, and you're left with an uncanniness, which is still unsettling, but it's not sort of horrifying. It's not sort of making a child feel that they have to sort of leave the room, or for fear of soiling themselves.
And people, rather than putting it like, oh, that looks ridiculous, that sort of thing. So, and I mean, when you're an adult, when you're a kid, you don't think of it looking like a penis. You don't. No. So and it's only the people that are older and giggling away and all that sort of thing that I mean, there's just something about these. It's mostly with the monsters that they look terrifying, but they're not. So.
Gary Aker says the scariest story is the body horror extravaganza that is the Seeds of Doom. Body horror, of course, has gone on to be expanded significantly in broader popular culture, but way back then in the mid-70s, like with a lot of those stories that Robert Holmes and Philip Hinchcliffe put together, the influences on the Seeds of Doom were classic sci-fi horror movies, kind of B-movie. Is it fair to call The Thing from Another Planet a B-movie, Anthony? I don't know, but
yes.
It is. Do you think I can get away with that, man?
It is, but it's a fantastic film.
No worse for it. I don't mind these B movies and things. But
I was going to say, Dan, Retro Doc is absolutely right. I mean, the imagery of that taken over, Keeler, isn't it? When he's being taken over by the pod and he's slowly getting greener and greener. And then he says, kill me. And then he's being fed with raw meat. I mean, it's pretty hardcore, isn't it? For a Saturday night, again, that imagery of him lying on that bed being strapped down with those ropes kind of sticks with you a bit. It was terrifying, but safe terrifying, because I mean, something that we've all said is how we've watched Doctor Who, and my dad had watched every episode since it had started with my uncle. So I was hot wired to watch this show. So it was never a scare because I was in a safe environment watching it with my dad. But friends at school would say that, they would see John Pertwee in the credits or Tom Baker in the credits, slightly kind of clouded, kind of building up the face, just that moment would send them scurrying out the door to hide, because it was signifying that something scary was going to be on the television. Just the image of the Doctor's face, it didn't bother me at all, but I could see why some people might say that. So
that
Retro
way.
Doc, thinking about Seeds of Doom, thinking about Tom Baker in the 70s, and thinking about that whole Philip Hinchcliffe era, there are some real shocks in there, isn't there?
No, he's absolutely right. I mean, that was my sort of cue to be scared. Seeing the title sequence was enough for me. Steve Bartle, who's 77, says, my earliest memory of anything is the giant vampire's hand coming through the floor. I was 3 years old.
Very young.
Wow. That was in State of Decay, wasn't it? Joe Grant was scary sexy, says Lee Smith. Still is. Lee still is. And we've got a great shout, John, there from Rob Alexander. So, Anthony, what's your first shock then that stayed with you specifically?
Well, I've already talked about, Dan, the Philip Hinchcliffe era, and I was thinking, it would be very easy to pick from lots of those. So I thought I would be a little bit more creative and kind of jump around in terms of when I started to watch some of the older episodes of Doctor Who that I hadn't seen transmitted. So we're probably talking about, probably the late 80s. So I was 17 or 18 years old. I hadn't seen lots of the John Pertwee, most of the John Pertwee stories go out. So these videos were passed around. It was probably the BBC video that I watched was for Spearhead from Space.
Okay.
And the moment from that story that I find absolutely shocking, and I was much older then, so it wasn't a childhood scare, is the bit when the Auton steps out from the wood and the unit soldier is driving in the Jeep. You with me? And driving in that Jeep, and then it crashes, and there is an image that stays with you of this unit soldier with his head in the windscreen, and the windscreen is covered in blood. And I was like, whoa, it was like they were doing that in the 70s. I was remembering Philip Hinchcliffe style Doctor Who, Weng Chang, like that, Mr. Sin there.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. And then when I went back and started watching things like Inferno and that story that I've just mentioned from Spearhead from Space, there were some real shocks. So I'm going to go for that one because it completely took me by surprise that they were showing blood on Doctor Who and a pretty nasty accident, as well. It was pretty shocking.
No, it's a great moment, and it's the sort of the way the camera sort of crashes in as well. It jolts, and it's in broad daylight as well. And if I remember rightly, there's not really any sound out where they are either. It feels very, very remote, and therefore, like anything, you've just we as viewers have disturbed something.
Yeah, and I mean the direction is superb, and taking the creative side of it, it looks great. But if you're thinking about the narrative and you're thinking about the story, that's a pretty shocking moment in that. But like you say, Dan, the remoteness of that is kind of gives it the chill. It's a bit like when Sister Lamont is in Terror of the Zygons and she's running through as a Zygon, but as Sister Lamont, she's running through that wood and then she gets shot and there's blood on her forearm. Obviously it's me and blood, isn't it? But blood on her forearm, it's really shocking because we
never see her take the bullet, do we? But we see that. I agree with you.
I think it's when and I've had this moment when I went back and watched Classic, where there's moments where I feel like now in telly, you're used to them either cutting away or just like stopping at the right moment when your head will fill in what's going to happen next, but they won't show it. And I found that watching Classic at moments when I'm like, oh God, they actually went that far. Like they actually didn't sort of have that, I don't know what's the right word, that scared sort of nature, which I feel like a little bit now TV across the board is sort of suffering from a little bit, that they're not trusting enough almost to do those sort of scenes.
It's like Spearhead from space, though. You're right about that, because the other one that which always scared me was when the woman sees the Auton come out of the building at the cottage, and she's terrified, and she's got the shotgun, and that is terrifying. It just keeps coming towards her, and she's like, I think they say, isn't it in the book? I think she collapses in the end, though, doesn't she?
Yeah, she freezes. She
terrifying.
So it's sort of cool. I think Charlotte articulated it really well. Thank you, Charlotte. You don't expect to see it in 1970s Doctor Who. You didn't expect to see the blood or that lady dropping down in that cottage. You know, it's real terrors, and they did show it, and you do see it, and it caught me out. So I'm going to go with that moment. Particularly,
I mean, obviously, there's nothing that's scarier than when the Doctor himself is scared, and if our hero looks. If our hero looks like he's had the wind put up him, then we know that something's about to get real, don't we? We've got several comments here in the live chat from people who've just dropped in as well. They've been out trick-or-treating, including Adrian James. Good evening, everybody. Happy Halloween. Happy Halloween to you too. Duncan Shaw asks, are any Doctor Who monsters remind you of your old girlfriends? All of them.
Funny you should mention that. The two mummies there. I had this flashback of me, but anyway, that's beside the point.
They're all one. The Absorbaloff, you know.
Twin sisters.
No, I just remember being in the middle. That's about it.
Oh dear. Yes, that's the kind of questions we like on here. Oh dear, yes. Here they are. Doctor Who is a Z movie now, says Lee Smith. I know what you mean, Lee, but I'm going to turn this around a little bit and say that in recent times, obviously, as horror has become a little bit more mainstream, a bit more accessible, mainstream event shows, The Walking Dead, True Blood, various shows like that have explored things that were only really feasible on the big screen. They've brought them to the small screen in a much more effective way. And I've carved out all these sort of subgenres, but Doctor Who has never really gone into any of them in any real depth. It still plays it all like a bit of a costume party, and I think that's one of the reasons why it still works, why it still feels quite unique. It still has that air of playing dress up about it, even in the CGI age. I don't think it's been sort of malformed to try and be something that it isn't, and that purity is something that we really should hang on to. So when I hear, Ian Diaz, well, I argue with Ian about this regularly because he believes that Doctor Who, he'll often state that Doctor Who needs to grow up. I think that Doctor Who needs a lot of things, particularly in 2024. But the one thing I feel it doesn't need to do is to grow up, not grow up any further, not to literally grow up. That balance should be absolutely right there, so it scares in a non-horrific way.
I think I think I can understand what Ian says in that it's not really that. It needs to be. It's just a little bit
the jokey
too...
elements. Yeah.
It just needs to take itself more seriously. It's not taking itself seriously. There's no danger, there's nothing.
Well, I'm not necessarily talking about Doctor Who as it is now, like the Shooter Gatwa era, the RTD2 era. Okay. I think when Ian means more in the general landscape, the entirety of New Who, he believes is like that, and that the show had its time as a children's show, and that on principle, regardless of who's sort of playing the part, that is now over, and the show really needs to evolve and become something else, which I think is a slightly different question.
I think it's about how you approach topics. I feel like that's what Ian's getting at sometimes.
Oh, maybe,
like you can have a concept or a story, and if you treat it seriously and with sort of the reverence you need to, if you're choosing a topic, it's not to then sort of go towards the topic and then go joke or then back away. One of the moments I can remember from New Who, which sort of in that vein, is the Bells of St. John, and it's the ending. And it's when, I can't remember the character's name, which is terrible, but the sort of the main antagonist, not the Great Intelligence, it's the woman who's the leader. I can't, and she's got a brilliant actress who plays her
The
as
one
well.
that Celia Imrie plays her, doesn't she?
I can't think of the character's name, but the moment that sticks with me, and that's because of how horrifying the thought was of what it meant, because it didn't back away. It's when she's free of the great intelligence and they find her in the room. And throughout the whole thing, she's been played as this very calculating, almost very old-fashioned, but in a good way, villain of sort of, like I said, intelligence, sort of always being one step ahead. And when you find her in the room, she talks like a child. And then it hits you when you go, oh God, she was a child when the great intelligence got her. So she's been a child in an adult's body for God knows how many years. And all of that is because they didn't back away for what that actually was.
A scary notion.
They could have gone soft, but that was quite a harsh moment of, this is what the great intelligence is. This is the sort of the no morals, the sort of how insidious and horrible this being can be, that it didn't think anything more of taking a child, making her live out as a adult but not know about it. And it's that sort of thing where you go, that's really adult, I would argue. That's a really sort of...
Because there's a harshness to it, there's a cruelty to it, something that we find it hard to imagine, something being worse than that sort of psychologically. We've got a comment here from Crimpton de Balloon who says that Matt's reminded me of the Ice Warriors lumbering down the flaming torchlit corridor of a storm-lashed Peladon castle, the Doctor and Joe hiding as it passes by. Those sorts of moments make Doctor Who. So thank you there from Crimply, and to you, Matt. But have you got one particular shock that stayed with you that you'd like to confide this evening amongst friends?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, well, I mean, I always go back to the android invasion with I remember being so young, I didn't know what was being said or anything like that. I just knew the Doctor was the hero, and I loved the Doctor. And suddenly he was really, really super aggressive towards his companion for some reason, and I'm like, why is he doing this? You know, when he shakes Sarah Jane, you know, and he's like, what have you done with her? You know, and it was terrifying for me because all of a sudden he just switched on a dime, and and then all of a sudden whether I always thought he pushed her, but when she goes down the hill and then all of a sudden her face falls off, and I'm like, whoa, you know, what the hell? You know, that stayed with me for like ever. And I often wondered whether or not I dreamed it or not, you know. And it looks hokey now, but
well, that's the kind of scene that when you first see it, yes, you're quite right, it does stay with you, and you can't rewatch it, or we couldn't rewatch it, Anthony, then, because it was still a while until the VHS tapes. And so I think Matt's right. You take these things in and they stay in your memory, and then does get to a point where you think, God, that was horrific. And I remember I'd got memories like that I hung on to, mostly the scary ones, the shocks too. But I got to a point where I remember telling myself, that can't be right. Doctor Who couldn't have done that, because Doctor Who is this cheap and cheerful show on the BBC. It couldn't possibly have been as scary as I remember it being when I was 5. That's what I would tell myself when I was 13, 14, and all of those stories, those older stories, were still inaccessible to me. I started to tell myself that all of that stuff, it couldn't have been that scary. And then gradually, as they all got re-released and came back to us, I was able to see, in many respects, I agree with you, I still watch that. Yeah, it's a cheap and cheerful thing, but when you're wrapped up in the story and you re-watch the Android Invasion now, just like Adrian James has too, this is exactly the same thing as you over here in the live chat on YouTube, it still works.
Yeah, and there's that scene, I still remember the first time I ever saw a Centauran. And, you know, it's that scene in The Time Warrior when he takes off the helmet, you know, and because all of a sudden, you know, you've had
it's great,
this lumbering, armored character, and then all of a sudden he takes it off and he turns around and he's doing the whole tongue thing. You know, he's just sticking his tongue out.
It just bobs out ever so slightly, doesn't it?
Yeah. that to me, I put that with the Centaurans, you know. So when they got rid of that, it just didn't feel like a Centauran to me, you know. It was like, obviously, you know, he had something problem with his spit or something, so he always had to put his tongue out or something, you know. But and it's just I remember that feeling of like, wow, his whole head is the same shade as his helmet, you know. And I was just like, that is so cool, you know.
This is what they wanted.
And it's just those sort of things, you know, I have fond memories of.
I was gonna say, Matt, when you know that bit that you were just referring to in Android Invasion, when you know Sarah does slip down that ravine and her mask falls off. Do you think that the strength of that scene, how it was realized, but the strength of that scene is that it was being made from scratch? You know, it wasn't a CGI event, you know, because the technology didn't allow it to.
Well,
and I think classic Doctor Who is scary because it's all practical, handmade. You know, it's all practical. It's real things, isn't it?
Well, there's something about a creature that has no like, it has facial features, but it doesn't move. Like, there's nothing there. It's just immobile. And things like, you know, the autons and all that, where, you know, you cannot see them emote. You cannot see them, you know, what they, because you can normally see what someone's thinking by the way that they emote. And when there's nothing there,
there's no humanity.
Even more scarier.
There's no humanity for us to appeal to sort of to gain, to tap into any vestige of mercy.
Well, it's the same with the mummies, you know. You just go, you can't see behind their masks, you know. Well, it took me forever to know that they were robots, you know. I honestly thought, you know, and especially until, you know, the Doctor got into it, you know, Tom got into one of them, you know, that you kind of like felt, oh, that's actually something that's you know, welcoming and friendly, you know. Otherwise, these autonomous things just look deadly, you know. I love it.
And I think the strength of the mummies is that it's a build. You know, it's what you see is what you get. There's no CGI elements to the mummies, and there's not multiple CGI versions of the mummies to make them a whole army of mummies, which takes away a little bit, for me, the realism. So because you've got two built in that picture, there's probably more, but as you've got two built mummies there, it feels a little bit more grounded and a bit more real, you know, a bit more tangible. I know things move on and technology moves on, but I think some of the strength of classic Doctor Who is that they're practical effects and they're built from scratch, and I think that gives it that kind of scary feel as well.
Yeah, there's one scene that I know for a fact that if it was done with like modern effects, it wouldn't have got me as much, and that's Lytton, when we get his conversion.
Ooh,
or his half conversion.
When they squash his hand, you know, and it's just the blood.
There's so many parts of that which I remember, because I'm not a Colin Baker fan. I struggle with most of his era, but I remember I watched that story. And it's because Lytton, we sort of know him. Obviously, he's not like a loved character, but we'd seen him in another story. So I think that adds to it a little bit. It's the fact that you can hear him scream. Like, that's what sort of first I remember sort of got me. And then it's the practical effects of the hand. Yeah. And then when you see him next, it's the fact that it's not computers animated stuff on his face. You can physically see where they've changed him. And for me, that made it way more scary.
He's not himself anymore.
And it's sort of, and for me, that sort of, whenever with the Cybermen, they can go back to that. When they go back to that, the fact that they are human, or they were once in their life a human, and you can call back to that. So with Lytton, I think that's one of the most effective ways they've done it, honestly. And whenever they can do stuff with the Mondasian ones, we said before with the Capaldi two-parter, when you go in the hospital in World Enough in Time and you can see the half converted there, and you can just hear pain, 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 and it's just like, oh, that just grabs you, and it absolutely scares you. Because
it's one thing for them, and it's one thing for them to convert people that we either don't know or met 3 minutes ago. But when they convert people that we've got to know over a set of episodes, or even characters that we've seen develop in the way that Lytton did across those two stories, it's considerably more effective. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Cybermen are so perennial and mentioned so often. They're mentioned, I think, by members of the public who aren't necessarily Doctor Who fans. They're mentioned just as much as the Cybermen are. And I think that's probably why.
Yeah, because it's that base fear of what would happen if all what we would see as human got removed from us. That's why I think since Troughton's era, they've been effective. And why that initial story, Tomb, there's lots of reasons why Tomb is incredible. But I think it's the fact that in the first outing, they sort of told you what you needed to know about what makes them scary. With what they were, and the idea of, I think in more modern times, we are seeing cybernetics a little bit. We are seeing how people can augment their bodies.
Transhumanism is actually on the way.
You look at that recent thing with Elon Musk putting a chip in someone's head, to make them, because they're paraplegic, or quadriplegic. And
some people are aspiring to this, Matt. There's nothing wrong with them medically, physically, but they are looking forward to the day where they can become augmented in some way. Already there are people who are minded that way.
Yeah, and you have other people just willing to put themselves up for experimentation just so that they can, there was that one for recently where the gentleman wanted to have his head removed and put onto another body, this was the thing. So, and there was a doctor that believed that he could do that, and so, but then the guy chickened out towards the end because he was like, oh, I don't think that's a good idea, even though he was still paraplegic.
Sounds like something.
This guy wasn't called Morbius.
He's like, I was going to die.
Exactly going to say that,
Look, I want to stay with the idea for a moment of sort of people being sort of transformed in some way, because that chimes in with my first shocker, and with what you were saying there, Charlotte, about Lytton, was when it kind of happened to a companion that I was really, really fond of. And that was Tegan, as played by Janet Fielding. And it was not so much in Kinder, but in Snake Dance, whereby, because she'd been possessed in an earlier story in 1982's Kinder, and we'd seen her escape the Mara in that. And so the idea that, firstly, I was very disturbed by the idea that a creature that we thought was vanquished was still there in her the whole time. That I found very disturbing. But for the character to gain control of her yet again, seemingly even more so, and to drive her away from her companions, from her friends, from the people who cared about her, and to get her to do the most unspeakable things in the real world, not just in her own mind. This shocked and disturbed me on a deep level. This was, like I say, this was a character that I was very, very, very fond of, and I'd seen her arrive in the show, and they were doing all these horrible things to her. Even though it was only 2 years, for me it was a really, really long time, and I've never really got past that. I think that has stayed with me because I latch onto that in other things as well. And the way it was realised on screen, it could have been better with hindsight, but these things did stay with me, and it disturbed me. And even though I didn't have this story on video for a very, very long time, I made an audio recording of it. So for a while, Anthony, all I had, I lost all the ropey visuals. All I had was the audio, the off-air audio recording. So actually, in the time in between me wiping my video of it in 83 and seeing it again when the VHS tape came out in, say, 92, my God, it had transformed. It had been significantly embellished by my own mind. But even now, when I see Tegan possessed by the Mara, even in the trailer they did for the Blu-ray collection quite recently for season 20, and they got Janet to do it again, didn't they, with her eyes all reddened. It tapped into something with me to see. Janet's now 40 years on, but instantly she was doing the thing, doing the voice and pulling the face. And it really shivered me again. So that's a confession from me. It's not particularly gruesome. It's just the idea of it.
Yeah, I get it. I get that one, Dan, because for me, when those two stories went out, it was kind of quite a nice story character arc for Tegan, wasn't it? You know, I don't think we had seen a companion that was going to be, you know, the events of one story was going to have a consequence so many stories afterwards. And it was a surprise, I thought, when that story went out, that we were going to go back there, because we thought the events of Kinder had been resolved. So it kind of opened up some possibilities, didn't it? So it was really good storytelling in a way that we hadn't seen before, that there was going to be something implanted in this companion, in Tegan, that was going to resurrect itself a couple of stories later. And to good effect. I mean, I agree with the audio recordings. I was doing the same thing, and you filled in the gaps, didn't you, when there was no talking? And the Target books did something else, didn't they? They embellished or revisualized things for you.
I'm trying to think, actually, that could have been the first instance that I knew of a monster from the series past, a monster, a villain, a threat, returning. I'd been watching the show since the mid-70s, you know, but I didn't really start taking it in until, say, 1978. The Daleks appeared in 79, but apart from that, they were pretty much one and dones.
Yeah, I always used to think John Nathan Turner was very good at that, and that team at the time, because you'd get the Mara over two seasons, and then, as Charlotte's just mentioned, Lytton. So you get Lytton over 2 seasons, and then you get Glitz over 2 seasons. So he started to plant these characters that would bob back up quite quickly. You know, there were plans for, you know, with Syl, so Vengeance on Varos, and then again in the Trial of a Time Lord. So he was, you know, he did that quite a lot in the way that the previous, you know, eras hadn't done, apart from the reoccurring characters like the Cybermen and Daleks and stuff. But this seemed to be quite deliberate. I always used to think that, you know, that you would get a returning character, and quite quickly. Yeah,
there's a distinct difference in scares and thrills and unnerving, disturbing imagery and ideas, says Craig Lightower there in the live chat on YouTube. And Andrew Gareth Dick reminds us of that moment where Scariest rips off his mask towards the end of Caves of Androzani and screams, "Look at me!" It terrified Andrew when he was 6 years old, and again, largely down to the performance of Christopher Gable, the physicality of that actor in that role. That still chimes now. Absolutely. You agree with that one as well, John?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great moment. And that did scare me when I watched it for the first time. Absolutely. Great one.
Similarly, with Magnus Greel's bent face, says bent face. It sounds like resting bitch face, doesn't it?
Yeah,
so I was called to Duncan Shaw. Anthony.
Yeah, I was going to say, Dan, it's Robert Holmes repeating the trick, isn't it? So
I suppose it is.
Duncan got there before me. You know, here's a mask reveal, and then here's a Scariest. You know, if you've got a good idea, use it a couple of times, and here we go again. It's a shocking moment. It was shocking in Weng Chiang. It's shocking in Caves of Androzani.
Milk it for all that it's worth. Babette Bombshell says in the live chat, or boasts, I should say, "I've never been frightened by Doctor Who, but there are moments that shocked me. The face smashed into the windshield in Spearhead from Space, the melting face in Dragonfire, and the hand crush in Attack of the Cybermen." So the similar moments that have been mentioned by a few people. And Darren Bradley's in too in the live chat there, and he says, "A friend told me, after watching the original transmission of the Green Death, her dad zipped himself up entirely in a beige-coloured sleeping bag and proceeded to worm his way up the stairs after her." So that is the kind of thing.
So
Please tell me that's true.
Has she been released back? Has she been released back into the community yet after that scare? Because that would terrify me beyond belief.
But I'm just imagining the poor wife like coming in, like, "Are you all right? What are you doing?" Like messing up.
Yeah.
It's a safeguarding issue.
Bus going, did you just see that?
Safeguarding issue.
It's a safeguarding issue, Charlotte, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
It could well qualify as one. We have mentioned him again, and yes, sure enough, he has appeared. Chris Chibnall. Oh no, he's here.
So that was the head swap guy.
It's all starting to. I know. You know, if Chris Chibnall appears, then that does mean it must be time. It must be time for a break. And you know, I remember hearing John Pertwee talk a lot about the idea of the appeal of Doctor Who and the particular brand of scares that Doctor Who can deliver. It is unique because it mixes the uncanny and the otherworldly with the everyday. And he used to talk a lot. He used to tell that story. Do you remember about how there was nothing potentially more frightening, Matt, than to come home and to find a Yeti sitting on your loo in Tooting Bec. Tooting Bec being an area of London, of course. Now, but that's a very fun idea to play with, isn't it? I like that idea. And John used to tell that story all the time, didn't he, Anthony? So this is something that we've heard all the time.
Yeah. I'd be quite scared if anybody was sat on my toilet, to be fair, let alone a Yeti. It's shocking.
I don't know.
Halloween there, right there.
I felt like the Yeti's always, because it's a Yeti, okay?
Yeah.
So you're expecting the Yeti to be in the Alps or, Himalayas or something like that. But when they're suddenly, in downtown London, it doesn't have the same thing. That's why I was a little bit disappointed with Web of Fear, only because it was just if they'd have put a bit more snow in there, I may have.
Well, look, if I found, I agree with you, Anthony, I would be disturbed by anybody. If I found a Yeti pinching one off in my bog, I think I would probably be somewhat disturbed.
You could think of something like that.
But the idea did stay with me. But fortunately, I thought, well, John Pertwee played with that idea in all those interviews all those years ago. John, sadly, is no longer with us. He passed away 28 years ago, unbelievably. Wow. I'd like to think that he would approve of this because I've used the wonder of artificial intelligence here, nearly 30 years on, to bring this into existence. And so I entered this into an AI engine to see what it would look like if you came home and found a Yeti sitting on your loo in Tooting Bec in the 1970s. This is what an AI engine told me.
Is that the series Yeti by any chance, mate? Is that what's coming back?
Are you sure you didn't put in also Addams Family? Because that looks like something from the Addams Family.
Dan, did you put in the sugar
monster?
It looks like the Sugar Puffs monster. It looks like the Honey Monster.
It actually looks like it's come up from the toilet, not sat on the toilet, to be honest.
I think after that shocker...
Overflow.
I think we're pushing it to the limit already, and this is as good an excuse as any to hit play on this one again. It's an annoyingly catchy anthem, all in tribute to the master of keeping things just scary enough in classic Doctor Who. This is the Type 40 Live ad break with a twist, a shout, and a scream. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
You were gone before we could tell you were number one. Sliding in a cloud of tobacco smoke, kids TV with a dirty joke. You called it hope and pulp and fluff, but it rang with the truth of waiter stuff. You were gone, we never got to tell you were number one. You were cranking it out at a rapid pace. Every world felt like a real place. Your brain and your pen might have taken you high, but fate marked you for the cheap sci-fi. You were gone, we never got to tell you were number one. You cloud of tobacco smoke. Kicks TV with a dirty joke. You called it hope and pulp and fluff, but it rang with the truth of waiter stuff. Ba 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 ba, you were gone. Never gotta tell you you were number one. Number one. Ba 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 ba, you were gone. Never gotta tell you you were number one. Number one. Number one.
Yes, we're back at it, facing our fears here on the Type 40 live Doctor Who Halloween special. Everybody, top of the shocks, no less. And on the panel, we've been confessing to the times our favourite TV show has chilled us to the bone. Yes, it doesn't really matter from which decade we grew up watching the show and following the Doctors. They've never kept us quite safe enough, have they? And some of it has definitely stayed with all of us. We're deep into our confessions here on the panel, and we've been joined too by people in the live chat across YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and X, chipping in with theirs as well. So thank you for all of that. Back with more here. So hope you enjoyed the tune there. That's courtesy, of course, of the great Gareth Roberts, an amazing tribute to the late great Robert Holmes, our I think everybody's favourite, most people's favourite classic Doctor Who writer. So yes, thank you everybody for the comments so far. This is the good stuff, and we're going to dig in a little bit more and exercise some of the demons. Yeah, what's the expression? Demons run when a good man goes to war. Demons run when a good man goes to bed. That's that could be. Yes, so obviously not all Doctor Who monsters can be as memorable as a mandrel. Plenty have fallen between the cracks in the pavement there, but it's amazing what does stay with us over time. It can also be, as I said, very, very, very personal. And although I don't know if I'd count the mandrels as a kind of body horror, let us know in the comments. The idea of being sort of zipped up in one of these suits, John, in the real world, there you are, you're suffering just in the scarf. Can you imagine what it'd be like under the studio lights, giving it some of that, chasing Louise Jameson or Mary Tam or Lalla Ward,
Oh, I'd be sweating so much. I'd be about 1 foot by the end of the recording, to be honest with you. Just forget paying me. Just get the zip open. Get me out.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, to some fans, that these kind of shocks, they pale into insignificance next to these kind of shocks that the TV movie gave us back in 1996 when the Doctor had the brass nerve to press lips with the gorgeous Dr. Grace Holloway there to steal a moment on New Year's Eve 1999. But those kind of shocks, I don't know. How shocked are people really by these things now? All this time on, I think, and the series has definitely moved on from that really quite innocent
just
and
a bit.
and
Tongue's involved now.
And chaste moment. Yes, it does. So yeah, this is the top of the shocks. Everybody, let us know which are yours. Which ones haven't we covered? And even if we have covered them, by all means, reshare. Again, there's no limit on where we can go with all of this. So who haven't we done? John, have you got another one that you want to give us? Another top shock from the Jordan archive?
Well, one that's a biggie for me is Curse of Fenric, where Dr. Judson gets up behind the Doctor, when he...
Oh, yeah, because he's been in a wheelchair for 3 episodes, hasn't
he? Yeah, lazy so-and-so. So, he gets back up. And I always thought that was really creepy and well done. And he opens his eyes and they're green. We play the contest again.
Well, it's a transformation, isn't it? Just like Charlotte was saying, just like I was saying, Matt. Down to great actors. Yeah, great actors inhabiting a role and living in a moment to scare the living daylights out of the other people that they're performing with, or us at home. Here is another example, just right here. Matt, have you got one that you want to give us? That you want to disclose after all this time?
I remember in the Monster of Peladon when the statue that comes out with the glowing eyes, and I just remember that when it comes out,
yeah,
and it's an inanimate object,
Easy on.
but it terrified the hell out of me,
It's quite ornamental.
Anything.
That's
with
the one that's
glowing
very
eyes.
large, and it's very large and sort of looms down on the cast, and that's the one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a giant one, and it just gets brought out out on a pedestal in the wheels.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's just the glowing eyes that really, really petrified me. I remember.
Just the little touches like that.
Yeah.
Well, I can imagine them when they were making these stories, and even sometimes into the new series, they must have thought just little moments in the design process where they say, "Oh, what if we made their eyes glow? What if we made the fingernails really long? What if we did?" And those little touches are often the bits that sort of push us over the edge a little bit, Charlotte.
Well, yeah, it's when a monster's got little facets to it more than just one. Like, for example, like for me, Tooth and Claw, it was just a werewolf, so that didn't scare me. But then when at the end, it didn't scare me, but I thought, oh, that's more interesting and more creepy when there was the hint that Victoria had been scratched. So there was a bit of werewolf in her. So it's just that little thought of, that's more chilling. Obviously, and they made a joke about it, like, oh yes, all those royals, they love hunting, don't they? But it was just that idea of, actually, there's been a little bit of a consequence at the end, which was a bit hidden.
No, I think I like it when the show does that, when it's very playful, because some of those things, they go somewhere, Anthony, but sometimes they don't. And we don't need everything to go somewhere, do we? We can have fun with those ideas in our heads, or if Big Finish want to do a 6-volume box set about it later on, decades later, then they can do that too, can't they?
Oh, you're muted, Anthony.
You're muted, Anthony.
My word. Do you like my cake? I've changed it round from the black to the red. I thought I'd get my money. No, I was going to just say, what I was saying there was, on John's point, it's good to be fun and playful, but the McCoy era was really fun and playful, but they go out for real shocks. What John's just said about Dr. Judson, Kane's face melting at the end of Dragonfire. So you've had 3 episodes of fairly light-hearted stuff, really, quite good fun. And then suddenly this melting face. I think about Battlefield, and then in episode 4 or the end of episode 3, you get the emergence of the Destroyer for another little shock value. So we're led to believe, aren't we, that the McCoy era is quite fun and light-hearted, and it's frolicky, it's great, but there are some real shocks embedded in some of those episodes, I think. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think later on, when I was a teenager and that, I found the Candyman scary. I did. Yeah. Whether or not it was just a shrilling voice, and the fact that it was also the music that they played. There was that Candyman music theme. And it was sinister, and I loved that, and it terrified me. I had freaking nightmares about that. No, I will admit that. But, it was.
The Candyman was a nasty bastard. That was the truth of the matter. He was played right up there, but he was a nasty piece of work.
But if you think about the demise of the people on Terra Alpha, he's concocting this, this tube that goes down, and everybody gets burnt to death, don't they? They get scalded to death with this liquid, sweets, whatever he's pumping down into them. He's a really nasty bastard, and it's a shock, and again it's another shock. So you've got all this fun, and then suddenly this cylinder comes down. Oh, you've just been burnt to death. All right, okay, didn't see that one coming. And that's what I feel a lot about the McCoys. So I think, John, I agree with you. There's suddenly this shock that you get somewhere along the way.
I think what also worked with McCoy, what you're talking to, is it's how the Doctor, I feel like in that era, they played with how how far is the Doctor willing to cross that line of morals?
Yeah.
How far is the Doctor willing to sort of almost be the villain? I think it'd been sort of teased with previous Doctors. I've said before, Tom had plenty of moments where there was that almost darkness. But I feel like with McCoy, when by that second series of his, they had a really good sort of idea. And it was McCoy's acting. Like you said, he's seen as this Joker, isn't he? Sometimes the sort of the funny Doctor, the jokey Doctor. But he was the most chilling with some of his line deliveries.
Yeah, I think.
Well, he found that dividing line in his performance. He worked so hard to get there. McCoy's commitment to the part in really quite a short period of time to turn it around and to make it something that he could relate to and to transmit something to us. It really is, when you go back and watch those now, it's no mean feat at all. And he gets to that place that I feel that, I'm not a massive John Pertwee fan, as you know, but I feel that Pertwee got to with his, where it was balanced very, very precisely. And I think McCoy got there too.
I've always thought with McCoy's Doctor as well, Dan, when you go, the good man goes to war, and Matt Smith says about good men don't need rules. Now is not the day to find out why I have so many. When I watched that, I always, straight away, I thought of the Seventh Doctor, because I thought it's the Seventh Doctor more than anyone, in my opinion, that would have so many rules that he'd have to put in place, because he would, he
code of conduct that he can't break.
He was brushing it, and going over to the dark side, so because he was trying to play 2-3 steps ahead all the time, wasn't he?
Yeah. I mean, I remember Planet of Spiders when John Pertwee's Doctor is in the room with all the spiders, and like they start laughing at him, and while they're laughing, they're jumping up and down and that sort of thing, and that was absolutely freaking terrifying for me, because I just remember their shrill laugh. And that they were all, all of them were just laughing because they weren't scared of the Doctor. They all just they thought, we've got the power to take you out. And I think and
they did. They got him in the end, didn't they?
To see the fear.
Yeah. Well,
to see the
not in the end, but they got him. There we go. That's the old joke.
I think. Sorry, Matt. You go.
No, you go.
You go. I was just going to say. Go for it. You go. Go.
No,
go.
You go. just the fear from him. Also, the fact that he was able to emote that fear that I can't take these on. They're just it's too overpowering. Yeah.
I think fear in the Doctor is so powerful when they do it, and they need to do it in the right moments. I think in New Who, and I've said this before, but I think it's a reason why people keep talking about it. Dalek. That scene with Eccleston.
Yeah, it's breathtaking, isn't it?
That is distilled fear. And it also goes into what I said about McCoy, the fact that you see the fear in his eyes. You see, and a Doctor at that point who's been so sort of strong in everything. He's not backed down for anything yet. He's almost unstoppable up till that episode. And seeing that as a child, like I was 11 or 12 at the time. And when I saw Eccleston's face, it got me scared, because suddenly the hero, the character that I've seen be that, like I said, unstoppable force has been reduced. And then he goes from that fear to then he realizes he's the one on top. So then you see the darkness in one scene.
If you look at that scene really closely as well, at Eccleston's face, you can see there are tears in his eyes. Yeah. And you can just welling up that the Doctor is terrified. And when he starts banging the door and he says, let me out, he really, really means it. He's borderline screaming. It's very, very effective, because up until that point, Chris Chris Eccleston had been playing it for about 4 or 5 weeks. And although we'd seen him pushed to the limit in some respects, particularly in World War III, we'd never seen him panic like that. And that was quite scary. Immediately, the music and everything else that played into that too, to make that very, very scary and and I would imagine that a viewer that had only been watching it for 5 weeks would have absolutely have been shocked by that flip of the character into a state of panic.
Yeah, and I think what was interesting was, for me, I remember you saw a hint of there's more history here, there's more story, and you could only get that reaction because of that.
Yeah,
to not have it degenerate into complete hysteria is what kept it believable, it's lifted the acting. It's just better acting. It's a better performance. It's a more believable state of being, and a hero. More to the point, I suppose, Anthony, a hero that we can all still get behind. That's still recognisably heroic, and yet flawed enough that we can relate to them and feel that they could lose, that it could be beaten or be killed, even worse. Nowadays, of course, in 2024, we're become quite accustomed to the Doctor shedding a tear now and again. It's definitely a thing. But I do want to give a shout out to The Legend of Ruby Sunday. For me, this episode this year really did represent a return to those kind of old school 70s thrills that really brought out the best in both Millie Gibson and Ncuti Gatwa. The idea that they were trying to recreate that one particular evening in that facility, the unit facility that was a kind of a time machine, a makeshift time machine, that was powered by VHS. It was all completely ridiculous. But they played that very believably. It was nicely written, and the special effects were so effective, and in a kind of Stranger Things kind of way. And this episode, the entire of the episode, I felt was incredibly classy. But these scenes in particular made me remember how I felt when I was a kid watching Doctor Who. It was a superb episode with some vintage moments. I'm looking forward to going back and rewatching that at some point in the future. But that does take me again, though, back in time to the very first memory that really did stay with me as regards a shock value in Doctor Who, and it involved another villain, and it was the Tom Baker era. A lot of these tend to come from the Tom Baker era, but this one is from a story that I'm not as fond of as other people are, and it's not one that's considered to be particularly scary. But the moment where, and even now I'm laughing as I say it, because every time they show this clip in some sort of clips package, it always looks a bit silly. But
it's the creatures in the pit, is it?
No, although now you've said that, though, that got to me as well. When the Doctor falls down the pit, it wasn't the creature, actually. It was the falling. It was the pit that frightened me, not the creature. Oh, that's a good one. I should have gone that. I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to stick with my original choice, and I'm going to go with the reveal of the true face of Scariest. This frigging terrified the life out of me when I was, how old? 4, maybe 5. My God. And I am talking for years. That single beady eye and the human hand as well. Everything. It's like, this just doesn't make sense, because this scared me more than a mandrel, than Kroll, and all of those things that are monstrous. Yeah, Anthony. But again, there he is with his cravat on. But you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. You know, as I said earlier at the start of the show, you know, if you ask me what I did yesterday, I have absolutely no idea. But this, I can tell you where I was sat. I can tell you which bit of the sofa I was sat on. I can tell you what the weather was like outside. This is a moment. So I was 8 years old, Dan. This was a moment that stuck with me, because it was unexpected. I think the way that they do it is great. I think the reveal of the alien is good symmetry to the start of the episode, so it makes a connection with Scariest in the spaceship. I too would agree. I wasn't scared by it, but I remember it as a very memorable moment. For a scare.
I remember thinking and watching it and seeing it again, even years later, I felt the same. But as a child, thinking, he's a wrong un. He's only pretending to be a man. He's he's an alien.
And you can see for a younger child why that's terrifying. There's a human face.
Obviously,
and he literally rips it apart, doesn't he? To reveal.
It's Julian Glover playing the part. Very good-looking man. He looks like the kind of villain you'd see on Bergerac or something like that.
Yeah.
And then he tears his face away. It's fucking hell. It's this beady-eyed bastard. It's. Even now, I'm laughing about it, but it's a kind of nervous laughter because it did. This seriously terrified me.
Yeah, I agree. And as we were moving away from the Philip Hinchcliffe era into Graham Williams, there was less of that gothic horror, wasn't there? There was, with Douglas Adams. We talked about this on the show a couple of weeks ago, but with Douglas Adams' contribution, it was a slightly more fun, light-hearted kind of approach to Doctor Who. But this bit's, I would agree. And also the bit when you were talking about Creature from the Pit with the Doctor jumping down the pit, that's the cliffhanger, isn't it, to episode 1? And you can see why, your memory of the Doctor being in that jeopardy,
it was the
down
pit.
That pit. It's the close of the episode. So that's the last bit you remember from that story. And like Mary Whitehouse would famously say, you had to wait a whole week to find out what happened next. So I can kind of get that one as well.
People latch onto the comedy in City of Death, understandably, because it's beautifully written, and the story itself is unique in Doctor Who history. But for me, it'll always be the one where the giant where the giant sort of spinach bloke was revealed and sent me to bed in a bit of a state that night. Talking about being sent to bed, Charlotte, I understand that the duvet's calling for the near birthday girl.
It is, and I shall let you all know next week how it went, because it is weekend my birthday, so I'll give everybody an update next week.
A very happy birthday to you, Charlotte, from all of us,
Happy
as
birthday,
always.
Charlotte.
Speak to you later. Night. And she was off in a puff of smoke there, so let us know what you think. Are you a familiar of Scariest, and do you chortle at the idea of this thing scaring the life out of me, or do you think it's ridiculous that our John was so petrified by the stones of blood there? And what do you think about Matt and his confession about the Agador statue? All of the things that we've confided to you this evening, you are entitled to take the piss if you want, because again, it's all part of the fun, isn't it? That's very much what we're about here at Type 40 Live. Thank you, everybody, for the comments so far. Don't have nightmares, Queen Charlotte. Reminds Matthew Pounder. That's it. I absolutely agree. I loved his spaceship, says Lee Smith. Lee must be talking about Scariest's ship. It's a very nice design, isn't it? It's
Had legs.
The ball with...
Yeah.
It's got 3 legs, Matt, or 4?
Yeah, it had 3.
Three.
Yeah, it looked like a frog.
I love the fact it's also got like a lorry hubcap strapped to the front of it as well, which is great.
I suppose it has. Great balance between humour and scares in that story, says Matthew Penn. I completely agree. It's it's wonderful. It is, and even though I say I don't love it the way that a lot of other people do, but I'd be a fool to argue against its classic status. This is exactly the same situation with Blink. People worship at the altar of this story for a number of reasons, not just the Weeping Angels themselves. We've talked about them several times on this edition of the show. There's something primal about this particular fear as well. It's how they look and what they can do to us. And I think that's been something that we've returned to more often than not as part of this discussion. People in the live chat are talking about Sutek and the Faceless Ones and all manner of classic and new Doctor Who stories. And yeah, we appreciate all of these comments. We've got this one from Darren Wilshaw, Darren, who says, hi to the gang at Type 40. The scariest moment from my childhood memories from the classic era is the reveal of the Morbius creature. And then the Doctor stuck in the train track in the Deadly Assassin. Yeah, Deadly Assassin, there's a sort of a portion of that story, isn't there, John, where the Be careful what I say here, because it did get them into a lot of trouble. I think it's sort of the middle portion where it sort of grips you and refuses to let you go. It's incredibly tense, almost visceral in places. And whilst I still think that Mrs. Whitehouse was a real sort of killjoy, I can sometimes, as a parent in particular, sort of see what she was getting at. It's relentlessly brutal in places, isn't it? The Deadly Assassin.
Yeah, it is. I would say, though, for me, it's the clown in the mirror floor that is probably the most terrifying bit of that story.
Yeah.
So it's
and the fact that he appears, and then you never see the bugger again.
Exactly. He's just gone. You know, he's off somewhere. You know,
God,
it's a horrible one. And I was also terrified as well. Not many people ever bring this one up, but I was terrified of the samurai when the Doctor's hanging off the cliff.
Oh, okay,
that's terrifying. And he does that howl, and just chop it, and then you see the Doctor or the dummy fall to the ground. But that's another great one. But that's just a great story.
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah,
I think it's the fact that the imagery doesn't make sense next to itself, Matt. The clown, the samurai, it's all a little bit lost, isn't it? A bit J.J. Abrams, a bit lost, mystery box.
I think that for the most recent series, I would say probably I'm just trying to remember the name of it. It's one of the Cybermen episodes where they have to go into the room and they all get sliced up, and that to me was like horrific, because you just know as soon as they go in that room, that's it, they're gone. You know, so it was like, and all the plastic, everything with plastic everywhere. You know where there was like all these plastic sheets and everything. It's just like you're just going in somewhere and you're not going to come out, and it's like, that's the only time that my skin crawled.
When they use practical, I'm going to say imagery, but they're actual props, aren't they? Set dressing props, Anthony. When they use things like those giant plastic curtains that, I've worked in places that have had those dividing various areas of various environments. And so when they use things like that
you
to sort of speak
quite past them,
world,
can you?
Yeah.
They're just that thick.
It makes me wonder, but it makes you wonder how near we are to that being a reality, the fantasy becoming a reality for humanity to end up sort of doing that to one another, to ourselves. You were the one who talked about you mentioned transhumanism earlier on, and the replacement limbs and all that kind of thing. It does seem to be accelerating again, and
within 20 years, easily.
It's one thing. It's one thing it being driven by a need, replacement limbs and things like that, which have changed completely for the better in a positive way. Human life, extended human life, and mobility. But the idea that things that don't need to be done, that people would voluntarily have parts of themselves removed, augmented, replaced, enhanced. That's a different question entirely.
It's like I saw an image of a lady the other day. She'd had both her legs amputated, and she had these fake, like they look like peg leg type things. They just didn't look. They weren't realistic, and I think, why would you do that? You're probably better off without them. I mean, it's not like you can walk properly. You need some help. So to me, it'd be like, it's augmentation that doesn't need to be augmented. You're fine without it.
You're good. Yeah. You're good. Yeah. We've had several mentions this evening of the late great Mary Whitehouse, chairman of the National Viewers and Listeners Association, scourge of the school playing field. We all hated her, didn't we, Anthony? Every school kid in Britain couldn't stand the woman.
We do, Matt.
We need her more than ever. Can we get the Ouija board out, please?
Bring in Cyber Mary.
Anthony, was her reputation deserved, in your opinion?
Not dressed as a cyber woman, no.
Was
belly button, please.
Was her reputation deserved? I mean, think about Deadly Assassin. I think about her comment about the Doctor being drowned. And I mean, Deadly Assassin is in one of my top 5 favorite stories. You know, when John was just talking about the samurai, you know, the warrior, the clown, all of those things. I remember as a child being really saddened when the samurai knife came through and cut the Doctor's scarf. And I thought, is that it then? Is it been cut in half? Do we not get another scarf? And I remember being quite bothered by that, you know, that the Doctor was in this jeopardy, that even his scarf was cut in half. So this was like proper business. But, you know, the end of episode 3, when the Doctor's head is put under the water, you know, does she have a point? Were kids going to replicate that? Were they going to copy that? You know, they, to our knowledge, they didn't. She probably did have a point, but, you know, like John Nathan Turner always used to say, as soon as Mary Whitehouse kicked up a fuss, you added a couple of million viewers on the ratings. So I don't think anybody was probably too bothered. But she may well have had a point, but nothing that we've heard as a direct result of Doctor Who.
My parents replicated it. They used to try and get me in on a Sunday night to have a wash, and they did a few times. They pushed my head under with the shampoo and made sure I was cleaned up.
Get down there, you bugger. Yeah.
Imperial level.
We do have a quote here from the great woman herself. So this is Mary Whitehouse on Doctor Who, a quote given in 1976, and she said that strangulation by hand, by claw, by obscene vegetable matter is the latest gimmick. The program contains.
I think she's talking about Seeds of Doom there.
By obscene.
Or a carrot.
By obscene vegetable matter is the latest gimmick. The program contains some of the sickest and most horrific material ever seen on children's television. Doctor Who has turned into tea time brutality for tots. That's the one that everybody remembers. I mean, it comes across as being completely ridiculous and reactionary, particularly when the vegetable matter. That's the way that people of that generation used to speak, wasn't it? But she meant well at the end of the day, and her interference on that undoubtedly ended the Philip Hinchcliffe era a season early, for which I think we've got good reason to be slightly cross with her for that. But generally speaking, a changing of the guard was probably going to happen soonish anyway, and times do change with Doctor Who. They always have,
hadn't he? He'd been doing it for at least 2 years or so.
I choose to remember Mary Whitehouse as the woman. She would be later in life, the kind of the almost was she ever cuddly? Probably not cuddly, but the slightly more kindly woman who didn't take herself quite so seriously, and who would turn up on Noel's house party and things like that. If you remember that on those shows where she'd get like gunged and things like that, Anthony, you know, she's very much on the joke.
We knew about her too. She was quite famous over here too.
Oh, was she?
Notorious, I guess you could say. Notorious.
It's interesting, that last quote, isn't it? You know, it's Doctor Who has turned into tea time brutality for tots. You know, has turned into. So she's looking at the Hinchcliffe era, I assume, and saying it's now turned into. But had she not watched Inferno? You know, had she not watched Spearhead from Space? I mean, there's some proper little gruesome ones lurking around 5 years previously.
I wonder, because of the time as well, with Doctor Who being so popular, was it the reason why there wasn't as much choice as there is today? Like, you know, how many I don't know how many channels you guys had, but for us, we only had 2. Like where I lived, we only had 2. So it was the public broadcaster or the commercial channel. That was it. And that was like that for the longest time. So, you know, to sort of like go, well, what's on TV? Well, you've got 2 choices. There's either one or the other, you know. So I wonder, I don't know how many channels you guys had during the 70s and 80s.
Okay. In the 70s, it was 3.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know, I wonder around that time, you know, whether or not what was going on the other channels as well. Was it a news thing or whatever, you know, those sort of.
There were controversies about things that were on other channels as well. But I think that, again, to be fair, it's something that when it came to BBC content, because it was publicly funded, it was more there was a more sort of open forum about it, and it felt more justifiable to take the program makers to task.
Because they go on about the violence on the news, But you look at the news nowadays, everything's all filtered out, everything, and not only just it's blurred out or it's not even shown, it's just described,
highly
and
sanitized,
you just have to take it, and you have to take it at face value. You have to take for what they tell you. So it's the same problem with our public broadcaster. We have to either take what they say as gospel, or just go, well, that's not entirely true, Whereas because we can't see it for what they're describing, and so it's far different today. The landscape is just so everything is sanitized now, and it's too sanitized as far as
taking the soul out of everything, isn't it?
It has.
Crimpling Doubloon says, going back to the Mary Whitehouse quote, I want to watch that story she's talking about now. It sounds great. And Darren Bradley is also in the live chat on YouTube and says, sorry, Darren, that picture. Okay, now. Darren Bradley says, I still want a Mary Whitehouse Enemies of Doctor Who jigsaw puzzle to join that line from Whitman Jigsaws, wasn't it, that ran through the...
He's not a Siamese twin,
70s,
is he? Conjoined twin, is he?
He has got a twin, if you're talking about Darren. He has got a twin brother. I don't know, that's him in the picture. So yes, we have. We were spent. We've let go of everything that we dare in the last couple of hours or so, sharing our Doctor Who top of the shocks with everybody across YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and X. I think we've covered a lot of ground. Maybe we've mentioned some of your favourites. Most notorious, I don't know. Let us know. Keep those comments coming, everybody. Okay, it may not be Halloween anymore by the time you get back to this, but hey, we're all sort of time travelers. Or, you stream this after the fact. Get involved, drop us a comment, and confess to us your greatest Doctor Who fears for more top of the shocks. Maybe we'll come back to this at some point in the future. But yeah, and the comments are still coming. There's people coming in from trick-or-treating, just like Stephen Braddock. Hi, everyone at Type 40. Just got in from trick-or-treating and a Halloween party. I'm dressed as a zombie, but I saw an empty child on the street on the way home. Oh, that's... I shivered my timbers.
S mask, was he?
That's enough to terrify the life out of me.
And Dan, your viewers are smart people. The very smartest, I'm told. Everyone says so, and I think they should know the truth, which everyone has been saying, is that Russell T. Davies and Phil Collinson, they've been going into these neighborhoods in Cardiff, and they've been eating the dogs, eating the cats, eating all the pets. My people tell me it's true. It's all true, and it's sad, very sad.
Thanks, big Donny boy. One more play for that, I think. Thank you to everybody at the Police Box again. Such a fun video.
Good done. Yeah.
As ever, we're rounding things off with a last scream at the view screen, our regular eye into the temporal schism in search of the prettiest pictures from out there in the Whoniverse. So it's fan art, digital art or traditional art is perfectly welcome here, as is cosplay and crafting too. So send them our way by all means, and we can get them up on the screen here in the Type 40 console room and have a good gander at your work or their work. Send it our way or us their way. We don't really care how it works, as long as we get to see the good stuff and parade it up here on the screen for everybody else to see as well. You mentioned a moment ago, Matt, the Agador creature there from one of the stories that scared the life out of you. One of the large sculptures.
Yeah, and that was only a statue. So
never knows what the real one.
I think he was more scary than Bok, to be honest.
I think you could be right. Well, you may want to cover your eyes, my friend, because this first piece of Doctor Who fan art from Owen Ruthven does indeed feature the little hairy cornflake himself. This is from the monster of... Oh, it's a Peladon mashup. It's both. Check it out.
I do love that story. Oh, that's
nice.
awesome. That's awesome.
There's a definite magic
I don't
to
know.
this.
Look, you're really missing a treat by not having a cuddly wuddly Agador, merchandise.
Yeah.
I would love that. I really would.
And you
You
get
could
the
just sort of-
hypnotising Sonic with it as well,
Yeah.
Vroom,
You could kind of rub his little tummy, sing his little song, all that jazz there, Anthony. Very impressive, says Rob Alexander. He's a fan.
I was going to say, Dan, because it's Halloween, when you think about Halloween tropes like thunder and lightning and castles, the Curse of Peladon and the Monster of Peladon has it in
Yes.
abundance, doesn't it? This is a really good story for Halloween. As thunder and light, I also think of Solon's castle in Brain of Morbius. It's a really it really just conjures up that kind of Halloween kind of, and this painting, this picture does that too, doesn't it? It kind of the thunder and
Really
lightning,
nice.
the mountain. It's great.
I mean, I love Alpha Centauri too. I've always been an Alpha Centauri fan. And for the longest time, I always felt that she was a companion to the Doctor.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I believed that she was in the Tardis and all that sort of thing, for the longest time.
Well, I think it's such a memorable character. The costume and the performance. I think similar to the character in Death to the Daleks, the little rock guy whose name I can never bloody remember.
They're
so
always
memorable.
critical of things.
That's it.
They're always critical of, things being put in for kids, but like, the Ewoks in Star Wars and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But for us little kids, they were great, and so was, Alpha Centauri. I mean, you knew that she was a friendly alien. She wasn't,
and that's why, Matt, I loved it under Moffat when they brought her back and they did that little Easter egg. In the Ice Warriors one, just on the screen. I just thought that was nicely done. I love that, and linking to the past. It was great because I've always liked that character, like you.
Lovely stuff. The idea that this character sort of would go into the TARDIS and go on a few adventures, I really like that. As Stephen Braddock says, well, Alpha Centauri has been in more episodes than Ncuti Gatwa or Millie Gibson. Which is actually true, isn't it? And Rob Alexander says Arcturus was annoying. We've got a wow, though, from Cheryl.
I was going to say, Dan, of all the monsters of Peladon, and on Peladon, Arcturus, talking about fans who saw that at the time, they were kind of quite spooked by Arcturus.
Okay.
I've been in conversations where at least 2 or 3 people have said, it was a scary story anyway, the Curse of Peladon, but with Arcturus, it was slightly, it was just a head in a container bouncing up and down, and it was.
And he had that voice.
Yeah,
It was like that bubbling
that
voice,
and the weapon that came out.
Yeah. So people who were younger at the time that saw that going out for the first time, would say, "Oh, that was a really scary moment." I couldn't see it necessarily, but they did.
I mean, it was only, I think it is David Troughton. I think it was David Troughton's character that was the only one that was, was probably the weakest link in that, because I was like, oh, what a pussy,
Oh, bless. Haroon reminds Stephen Braddock as well in the live chat. Brings back memories for Simon Ashley, and Ezra Goldstein says it's fantastic. We've got Martin Bennett in the live chat who says, I always wanted Black Lace to adapt their Agadoo for Agador. Martin, don't laugh. You'll only encourage Martin. You're a silly sausage, Martin, but we do like you. Stick around by all means. Yeah, so that one's from Owen Ruthen. You can find his work all over X and Instagram. A fabulous Doctor Who fan artist, mostly digitally, but I think he does traditional stuff as well.
Yeah, very well done. Love it.
Well done.
Nice balance, was it? Design-wise, very, very nicely balanced.
Very
I really like it.
I love it.
Yeah, choice of colours was different too. The next one we've got is from another Doctor Who artist we've featured several times as well, mostly for digital stuff. This is the newest one from Oliver Chenery, who's clearly, I think they're probably an autist kid. And I was a massive Sarah Michelle Gellar fan back then, but I was willing to add all I was well into adulthood, and I just liked those little sort of skirts and the tiny boots she used to wear, John. When she was playing Daphne in Scooby-Doo as a blonde, I didn't like her, quite so much. I didn't like, because to me, Daphne was meant to be a redhead, and even though I like Sarah Michelle Gellar, I didn't want two of my favourite fantasy women to sort of be melded together in that way. Yeah. So I never quite felt it. But I know there's a massive sort of fandom now for the two 2000s, early 2000s Scooby-Doo movies, which starred Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze Jr., her husband, and who's it? Linda Cardellini, who plays Velma.
Scream as well, wouldn't it?
That's right, yes.
Scream was Shaggy.
Here we are, courtesy of Owen. We've got a mashup to end all mashups. Scooby-Who from back. So we got the Doctor and Ruby there together with Scooby-Doo, the Scooby Gang, from those popular movies from the mid-noughties. They're a fun picture, nicely put together, I feel, by Oliver, with Scooby himself clutched another dog on the Doctor's back. There, it's getting to be a habit, Matt.
Yeah, I don't know.
I feel sorry for the dog. You don't know what he'd do.
What with the dog in the mystery machine?
That's why Scoobs right now has got that face on. He's going.
I don't know. I'd be a bit worried if Shaggy went in the back, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not a furry, I'm a dog, mate. Yes, so I really like this, and it's the little details as well, because when you go a little bit closer, you can see the pumpkins there towards the right, Anthony. But if you follow the trail, you go and you see that it leads up to not just the TARDIS, but some mummies as well, and an old priory.
I was with you there, Dan. I spotted those. I skirted past Millie and Shooty, and I went straight to the TARDIS.
Sensible
and I went
man.
straight to the mummies. And I was thinking, gosh, that sort of that whole little section there, I think it's great. But that whole little section around the TARDIS and the pumpkins and the mummies looks that looks like an adventure I wish we could have.
You could see Falma looking up with her torch, going, "Is that a giant dog?" It just works.
Yeah.
You need some hell of a Scooby snack to chuck to old Sutek, wouldn't you? So this is a fantastic piece, I feel, from Oliver there over on X. Really nice stuff. And we've got some more comments on this in the live chat as well. From Scooby-Doo fans too, maybe, I don't know. I love crossovers, says Sentai Ranger Donny. I don't mind crossovers either. I'm reasonably keen up to a point, particularly with sort of cartoon characters. I love the Scooby-Doo and Batman stuff from the early 70s. That is a lot of fun. What fun, says Simon Ashley. Kess the Drone says Humpy-Doo. I don't know what you mean, but the night is young.
Well, they did have Scooby-Doo meets the Addams Family.
Ezra Goldstein says it's so-so. So-so what? So cool? So. Russell T. Davis will make this happen, suggests Stephen Braddock. So you may want to send that into RTD, courtesy of Bad Wolf Studios.
Was.
Oh, come on. Oh, don't. Oh, no. It's all right, everybody. It's nearly the end. Lily Shambles says the strangest part of that pic is Ruby and the Doctor actually together. Yeah. For best friends, they don't spend much time in one another's company, do they, Anthony? I'd noticed that.
It was good he turned up for the picture, to be fair.
Get him to stand still for long enough. Oh, God. Shaggy would make a better Doctor, suggests Lee Smith. Yeah, I think he's decent enough actor. I've seen him in lots of things since. It's Sutek again. We've got lots of Sutek comments. I can't unsee that, says Matthew Bird. And Scooby-Who. Yeah.
He's trying to hump him.
That's Oliver Chenery on Instagram and X. Please go and tell him, yes, if you do like this work, preferably. If you don't like it, leave the bloke alone. But yeah, if you do like it, go over and tell him so.
Very
and please
good.
tell him
Well
that
done.
Type 40 Live sent you. Please do. Oops, it's good, says Lily Shambles. There you go. Let's clear that up. Doctor Who Time Bandits crossover, suggests Lee Smith. It depends which Time Bandits we're talking of. If we're talking about the proper Time Bandits, then absolutely, I'm totally down for that. Down for that, John.
Yeah, absolutely. Just not the monstrosity that they're. What is it? Is it out yet?
What? It doesn't exist anymore. It's gone.
Yeah, it's erased from history.
The fact that most of them are brown bread is neither here nor there, is it? And I wanted to finish off with more of the fabulous work of Tom from Tea Dwarf Productions. These beautiful creations, courtesy of Tom.
Look at that
Listen,
I love that Frankenstein. Oh my God, that Frankenstein is brilliant. I love it.
So a closer look.
Talent, isn't he?
Yeah,
Very,
that's
very
great. I love it.
talented. So we have a sort of man-bat creature there, Matt, on the left. We've got a Dalek wearing a magician's hat, a Frankenstein's monster, and a kind of Orby thing that which wouldn't look out of place in Mars Attacks, I feel, or one of those classic kind of pulpy movies. There's a vampire holding a pumpkin with a purple face and a red hand.
The Wolfman is definitely male.
Yeah, I definitely will be adding to my mechanoid.
Either that, or he's about to foul the heat. We've got several spiders, several spiders at their feet, including one wearing a witch's hat there, Anthony, and clutching a broomstick. A lovely touch.
I love the monster at the back. It reminds me of the Blue Peter design a monster competition in the 60s that Patrick Troughton judged.
Yeah.
That kind of big, kind of eyed
with the metal legs.
Right in the middle. Yeah, with the metal legs.
I love that. It reminds me of
Tom's intention.
Frankenstein's the favourite, though.
Nice, says Ezra Goldstein. Tom is still with us. He says Frankenstein is actually a Sontaran in disguise.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
That's even better. That looks awesome.
That's brilliant.
Lily is asking Tom, what scale is this? If you could let Lily know in the live chat, she'd appreciate that. Yeah, it's good. You've got a lot of fans here, Tom. People love your work. I like how he's worked his emblem into one of the pumpkins as well there, with a bit of subliminal advertising, John.
Clever lad, isn't he? Clever lad. He's clever. He managed to sell a mechanoid to me, so that's impressive. So I highly recommend anybody purchase from Tom because he does great work. I'm gonna go for one of those Sontarans and the Dalek at some point, Tom. So I'll be speaking to you, mate.
Fabulous stuff from Tom Alford. Whatever floats your boat.
I'm coming out.
Yeah, it's great stuff, Tom, as always. And I'm delighted when you sent me these pictures earlier in the week. His customary sort of team Halloween that he's put together there. And he says that Lily, my models are 5 inches tall. There you go. So that's the answer to anybody who's curious.
I just looked at the bat. It looks like looks like the pumpkin's hanging off. I had to double look in, and then I realised that the pumpkin was hanging off the Dalek.
Yeah, it's not like weight training, Matt.
Yeah, sorry.
Good innocent fun. Yeah. Keep them coming, please, Tom. Yeah, all your creations. We love to see your stuff. The Bat Monster is a girl. He says, the Bat Monster is a girl after all. Who knew?
Oh, well,
Tom knew.
Yeah.
She might have a piercing
on order.
Wonderful. And the perfect way to close out our Halloween special here. And as always, we need more fan art, though. So we're very, very greedy like that. And these are big walls that we've got to fill up. So send it our way or us its way. We want fan art from Instagram, from X, from anybody's online portfolio. If they want to show it to us, we'll get it up on the screen. We can all have a look and refer people to go and find it and maybe buy some prints or just tell them how wonderful it is. That's how it works here at Type 40 Live. You can reach out to us through our social media. That's Instagram and X at Type 40 Doctor Who, or you can completely cut out the middleman. Head over to the Type 40 Facebook group there and festoon the walls with fan art from wherever and whoever. We've got a dedicated group of art lovers there, including one or two of these gentlemen who are more than appreciative of any Doctor Who fan art that we brighten up the wall with there in the Type 40 Facebook group. So come and join up and join in, and you may never leave. That's the only thing, particularly when we bring out the tarts. That's wonderful. Yes. So, we've done turnips, we've done tarts, we've done pretty much every cheap gag that I've got in the book here, Anthony. It's been a vintage night, and what I'm very, very proud of the sterling work that we've achieved this evening.
Oh, me too. And I hope it's not too late to go out and do some trick or treating because I'm all dressed up, so I'm ready to go out.
All dressed up and nowhere to go. Well, the thing is, I mean, the pubs may be closed, but there is some all-night drinking establishments. Some kebab houses are open till 3, 4.
Yeah. I'm ready to go. Ready to go. I've got my broomstick. I'm off.
He flies away. If you're going to fly away, well, don't fly away just yet. You've got to leave us a comment, and you can always hit up our playlists too, because this is just the latest of Halloween extravaganzas here with us at Type 40 Live. We've been doing this a fair old while now, and you can do some time travelling of your own by hitting up the playlists to relive past Halloween specials. Last year, several of us got together to review The Demons here completely live on YouTube with our pal Stephen Noonan. That was a great laugh. Shah was there, also in fancy dress, stealing the show, as always, MVP. She's working tonight. Sadly, she couldn't be here. Bless her heart. You missed Shah. Get back here soon. So that was fabulous. Type 40 Live and The Demons. The year before, it was Type 40 Live to the rescue. The Doctor had just regenerated, thank heaven. Or so we thought. The 14th Doctor had appeared. Was everything going to be all right? Well, we now know, don't we? But head back to episode 75 of the show and you can find out for yourselves. And then there's 3 years ago on episode 39, Type 40 Live went trick or treating and had a bit of a sort of Halloween party then as well. I think we were looking forward to, well, I say looking forward to, we were sort of biding our time and waiting for the Halloween Apocalypse episode to screen and just sort of get out of the way all the way back then in, when was that, 2021. Doesn't time fly? Doesn't time fly when you're having fun, just like the last couple of hours has here across YouTube, Rumble, Facebook and X, as we've been going through our top of the Doctor Who shocks with you here, there. Brilliant stuff. I do feel like some of this has been exercised. I've confessed things that I don't think I've ever spoken of before, and thanks to you buggers, I've now got a couple of fresh nightmares that I've forgotten all about. That was you. Who was it who did that? You did one, John. Matt did one. I think Charlotte probably scared the life out of him with something. It's all of you sods.
Anything.
There's nothing more scary for me than Donna, but there you go. I couldn't really.
Donna Noble.
Yeah.
It's back to the old ex-girlfriends thing again, isn't it?
Oh, God. Talk about memories.
The Bilbeloffs.
Talk about memories.
Bring back those mummies, will you?
Yeah. I had an ex that was a lot like Donna. It did come with its good points. But yes, thank you for sharing your top of the shocks there in the comments as well. We've had some great ones, and we've had some new names turn up as well. So it's always fantastic to see fresh victims. To stumble into the crypt of Type 40 Live. Yes, great. Thanks again, and a big happy birthday. Well, not old, she's not that old, but she's hitting a larger number here now. Charlotte Shields, happy birthday for the weekend, and looking forward to you coming back in a few days' time as well. Yeah, great to have you with us as well, of course, Matt. It's November for you already. A bit closer to Christmas. It's like Pride Month. You have a birthday month.
Pride. Don't be bringing up Pride. No,
but we now have Pride Month. You can have birthday month, can't you?
Yeah, I can have birthday month. I don't really want to look forward to birthday month. Come on.
No, I do get a bit like that, Anthony. I have to say, it's like another one, really.
I'm hitting another decade. I just can't. I can't deal with it.
Who are you calling a tart, Dan? Asks Simon Ashley. Well, takes one to know one. Simon, that's
I do
too
love
late
a good tart, but I love some crumpets too.
There you go. Too late. God.
Jaffa cakes.
Simon, come back. Too late for candy.
That's why I said it, so because Simon's not around to have a go at me.
Oh dear. Too late for candy for you, says the Peter Venkman fan site. We'll have to head over to the Peter Venkman fan site. I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan, John, and I think it sounds like somewhere I'd like to go. Yeah, but John, are you still under the scarf, mate? Is it the fact that you can't get out at this point? Is that why you're still wearing?
I'm locked in. This boa constrictor's got me tight, to be honest with you.
Oh dear.
I've actually lost about 4 stone during this show. Because
I was going to say, you're hot or cold in that.
Yeah, I tell you what, the neck's gone. You know the neck braces you have if you do a neck injury. It's become like that now. So I'll be wearing this tomorrow.
I just
think
can't
that-
stand things on my neck. I
No.
cannot stand it. I've just got to have my neck
The worst
free.
part is, I think the hat is actually welded to my head now, so I'm not sure I can get it off. So yeah,
Is that
Could
a woolen
be-
blend hat, by the way?
it's
Oh,
it's magical, mate.
Yes, it's
a wool.
woolen. Yes.
Yes, it's a wool felt, mate.
There you go. Yeah, I've got one of those as well.
Yeah. So
Where?
I feel eccentric. We've gone down a new
Talking
road,
about
haven't we?
fashion now.
And welcome to the Clothes Show, everybody.
I was just going to say, Anthony, what on earth have you let yourself in for, mate, joining up with us?
Well, honestly, it didn't take long, did it? Look, 3-4 shows in. Oh, can I wear a cape? Can I wear a cape? So it didn't take long, did it?
You very much found your people.
As long as you don't want to wear a dress, we'll be fine.
I'm just disappointed I didn't
That's
get
next
the Black
week.
Red Riding Hood.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's very fetching. Very fetching. So yeah, we want more of your comments. Of course, we do, because Halloween will continue as long as people continue to catch up with the stream or relive it. If you're brave enough to relive the top of the Doctor Who shocks here with us here at Type 40 Live. Thank you, everybody, for all the comments, all the interaction, and all the support as well across social media. It really does mean a lot to us. We can't thank you enough. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Join us again very soon, same time and space. We can't promise. Well, there's always shocks most weeks, isn't there? Let's be honest. We'll have some comebacks pretty soon, as well as some of the others return from out of the vortex. We may find out what Simon Horton has been doing, knocking about with stormtroopers. We may do. And what of the others? What of Ian David Diaz too? He's been out filming, clearly a lot later than he believed. Because I did think he may be. He's not here. He's a no show after all, but he will be back. As will several of the others, I'm sure, in the run-up to Christmas. There's a lot to unwrap, isn't there, always? But for now, yeah, enjoy your trick-or-treating. If you've managed to bag some sweeties there. And maybe if you're doing any fancy dress, you can always join the Type 40 Facebook group too, if it's Doctor Who related or not. And come and show us the pictures, by all means. And head right back here to Type 40 Live next week for more hot takes, pet peeves, rants, and raves with the undead and the unholy. And make sure you're still subscribed, of course. We can't stress that enough. Okay, I think that about covers it. Thanks again to Charlotte, to Matt, to Anthony, to John, and to you out there. This is where you can find the very best mix of news, views, nostalgia, discussion, debate, and banter. So make sure you stay notified. We always have the time if you have the space here at Type 40 Live. The witching hour is nearly upon us, everybody. Sleep well. Bye-bye.